The Justice League had faced alien armadas before, Apocalypse's parademon swarms blotting out the sun, Brainiac's world-harvesting dreadnoughts crackling with stolen civilizations, the Thanagarian invasion fleet that nearly conquered Earth through strategic brilliance. But when the anomaly tore open in geosynchronous orbit at 0347 hours, every sensor on the watchtower screamed warnings in frequencies that shouldn't exist. Cyborg's motherbox integration went haywire first. The sentient technology, forged in the fires of Apocalypse, touched by the source itself, recoiled from energy signatures that violated everything it understood about dimensional physics. "We've got a massive spatial distortion," Victor Stone reported, his mechanical eye blazing with data streams. "Something's forcing its way through the quantum barrier. In energy output is..." He paused, recalculating. "Batman, this thing's power core is outputting exotic matter reactions on par with a collapsing star." Bruce Wayne didn't look up from the tactical display, but his fingers were already dancing across the Batcomputer's interface. Threat assessment protocols activated, Watchtower defense systems primed, Justice League emergency summons transmitted. "Size? 333 meters, Cyborg breathed. "It's a warship, and it's not slowing down." The vessel that materialized through the screaming dimensional rift was a titan of blue-gray steel, a dreadnought-class battleship that would have looked at home in Earth's Second World War, if Earth's navies had ever mastered faster-than-light travel and mounted weapons that could crack planets. The space battleship Yamato hung in the void above Earth like a steel promise, its wave motion engine still crackling with residual energy from an impossible jump that had torn them from their universe's dark nebula and deposited them in skies watched over by gods. On the bridge, Captain Susumu Kodai gripped his command chair as reality stabilized around them. Alarms wailed. Damage reports scrolled across tactical screens. Navigator Yuki Mori called out coordinates that made no sense. Constellations in wrong positions, stellar drift patterns centuries off their charts. Chief Engineer Tokugawa reported wave motion engine stress at critical levels but holding. Tactical Officer Shima confirmed weapons systems operational, Cosmo Zero fighters ready for launch. Captain," Yuki's voice carried the trained calm of someone who'd stared at Earth's irradiated corpse and kept working. "Star charts don't match any known configuration. We're not in our galaxy. We're not in our universe." Kodai had led his crew 148,000 light-years through impossible odds to save a dying Earth. They'd survived the Gamila's Empire's planet bombs, outlasted the White Comet Empire's world-crushing fortress, faced extinction with courage and desperate hope, but now staring at the blue-green world below that looked heartbreakingly like the home they'd saved, he felt the weight of command settle heavier than ever. "Life signs on the planet?" he asked. "Billions," Analyzer's mechanical voice reported. "Earth-class world, oxygen, nitrogen, atmosphere. Water coverage approximately 70%. Captain, it's another Earth. Alive. Thriving." Before Kodai could respond, Radar Officer Ihara's station erupted in proximity warnings. "Multiple contacts inbound. Velocity patterns suggest intelligent control. Lead object is..." He enhanced the image on the main view screen. "Human-shaped, sir, it's a man, flying, in space, without a ship." The figure that appeared beyond the Yamato's reinforced viewports defied every law of physics the crew understood. He wore red and blue, a cape that shouldn't billow in vacuum somehow streaming behind him. The stylized S on his chest caught starlight. His eyes, God, his eyes were kind even as they assessed the warship with vision that could see through steel, count the heartbeats of every soul aboard, measure the exotic energy bleeding from their engines. Superman stopped 50 meters from the bridge, were close enough that his heat vision could have cut the ship in half if he'd chosen violence. Instead, he raised one hand in the universal gesture of peace. "Attention, unknown vessel." His voice came through every speaker on the ship simultaneously, transmitted on radio frequencies, electrical systems, even vibrating through the hull itself. "This is Superman of the Justice League. You've entered Earth's orbital space with weapon systems active. I understand you may be lost or in distress. I'm here to help. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." On the watchtower, Batman watched the feed from Superman's suit camera with narrowed eyes. Behind him, Wonder Woman checked her bracers by reflex, the gesture of a warrior who'd lived 3,000 years and knew peaceful first contact could turn bloody in seconds. And the Flash vibrated with barely contained energy, ready to evacuate civilians if the ship opened fire. Green Lantern. Hal Jordan's ring glowed, hard light constructs already forming in his tactical mind. That ship's design, Batman said quietly. Modified naval architecture. Earth-human configuration. But the power readings are terrifying, Cyborg finished. The energy weapon mounted in the bow? I'm picking up tachyon emissions, exotic matter containment fields, and something that looks like it's designed to channel the output of that engine directly into a focused beam. Bruce, if they fired that thing at full power, he didn't need to finish. The numbers spoke for themselves. Captain Kodai stood, straightening his uniform. Around him, his bridge crew waited. Shima's hand near weapons controls. A Sonata analyzing the flying man with scientific fascination. Yuki ready to transmit or translate. They'd survived by trusting each other, by believing in their mission. Now, in a universe not their own, facing a being who flew through vacuum and spoke with quiet authority, Kodai made the choice that had defined the Yamato's legend. Open a channel, he ordered. All weapons to standby status. Show him we're not here to fight. The view screen shifted. Superman's face filled the display, and for just a moment, Kodai saw something that made his decision feel right. Hope. Not naivety. Not weakness. The kind of hope that survived apocalypse and chose to believe anyway. I am Captain Susumu Kodai of the space battleship Yamato, United Nations Cosmo Navy, he said, his voice steady despite impossible circumstances. We mean no harm to your Earth. He glanced at his crew, at the ship that had carried them through hell and back. We're far from home, and we need help. In the watchtower, Batman's fingers flew across the keyboard. Background analysis, threat modeling, contingency protocols. Because in a universe where Superman had become a tyrant in another timeline, where absolute power had corrupted absolutely, a warship that could destroy planets wasn't just a vessel. It was a test of whether desperate warriors could resist the temptation every god among men faced. The belief that overwhelming force could fix a broken world. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. Hope shines brightest in the darkest night. The Watchtower's main conference chamber had hosted alien ambassadors before. Martian Manhunter's first arrival, Hawkman's Thanagarian delegation, even Darkseid himself during that brief, terrible ceasefire before the Apocalypse War reignited. But watching Captain Kodai and his senior staff materialize via transporter beam, technology that made Cyborg's eyebrows rise with professional appreciation, Batman couldn't shake the feeling that this first contact carried different weight. These weren't conquerors. Their uniforms were military, but worn with the exhaustion of soldiers who'd seen too much. Captain Kodai's eyes held the 1,000-yard stare Batman recognized from his own mirror. Chief Engineer Tokugawa's hands were calloused from manual repairs no automation could handle. Navigator Yuki Mori moved with the efficiency of someone who'd plotted courses through impossible odds. Science Officer Sonata carried himself with the quiet dignity of a man who'd calculated their extinction probability and kept working anyway. Superman stood at the head of the conference table, cape pulled behind him, arms crossed but posture open. Inviting. Wonder Woman stood to his right, a warrior's assessment in her ancient gaze. Batman remained in shadow near the tactical displays. The Flash leaned against the wall, trying to look casual but ready to move at light speed. Green Lantern floated cross-legged in his emerald construct chair, ring humming with barely contained power. Cyborg interfaced directly with the Watchtower systems, running analysis on every word, every biometric signal from their guests. "Got your ship," Superman began gently, "has a weapon that our sensors indicate could destroy a planet. I need you to understand, we've seen what that kind of power does to people, to civilizations. We need to know why you have it." Kodai didn't flinch. "Because our Earth was dying," he said simply. "The Gamila's Empire's planet bombs irradiated our homeworld. Humanity had 1 year before extinction. The Yamato's wave motion gun wasn't our first choice. It was our only choice." He met Superman's eyes without challenge but without shame. We built a doomsday weapon because we needed to travel 148,000 light years through hostile territory to retrieve technology that could save 8 billion lives. Would you have done differently? Context matters, Wonder Woman said, her voice carrying 3 millennia of tactical experience. But intention doesn't change capability. You carry the power to end worlds, Captain. In our universe, we've seen heroes corrupted by far less. Injustice timeline, Sonata spoke up, his analytical mind already processing intelligence gathered from preliminary scans. Alternate reality where this universe's Superman established totalitarian regime after personal tragedy. You're afraid we'll make the same choice. Impose peace through overwhelming force. The Flash stopped vibrating. Green Lantern's construct flickered. Even Batman's eyes narrowed slightly at how quickly the Yamato science officer had pieced together the League's deepest fear. Smart, Batman said from the shadows. You've been scanning our communications, reading our history. How much do you know? Enough, Yuki answered, her navigator's precision extending to diplomatic waters. Enough to understand you fought gods and monsters. Enough to know your Superman chose hope over vengeance when he could have become a tyrant. Enough to realize you're debating whether to help us or destroy us. Superman's jaw tightened. We don't destroy people for carrying weapons, but we need to understand your intentions. Your Earth, the one you saved, what happened after you returned? Kodai's expression softened with something that might have been grief or pride or both. We disbanded the military fleet, converted the Yamato into a deep space exploration vessel. The wave motion gun was sealed except for genuine extinction-level threats. We chose to explore instead of conquer. He gestured to his crew. We've spent years mapping peaceful contact with alien civilizations, trading technology, building alliances. We were investigating an anomaly in the Dark Nebula when the dimensional rift pulled us here. Your wave motion engine, Cyborg interjected, holographic schematics appearing above the table. It's generating exotic matter reactions our motherbox technology doesn't fully recognize. Not New God science, not Kryptonian, not even Thanagarian. It's punching holes in dimensional barriers just by existing in our quantum framework. Tokugawa leaned forward, engineer recognizing engineer. The exotic matter fuels our faster-than-light travel. We use controlled tachyon emissions to create localized space-time distortions. Cyborg finished, excitement bleeding through his usual calm. You're riding the wave of your own dimensional disruption. That's brilliant. Terrifying. But brilliant. It's also unstable in this universe, Sonata added grimly. Our preliminary analysis suggests DC universe physics don't quite match our own. The fundamental constants are slightly different. We're adapting, but every time we charge the wave motion engine, we risk tearing another rift. Batman stepped into the light, and several Yamato officers stiffened at the Dark Knight's sudden materialization. Which means you can't leave. You're stranded in our universe with a planet-destroying weapon you can't fully control. During an era when Darkseid actively seeks any advantage against Earth, Lex Luthor would kill for advanced energy weapons, and every villain with cosmic ambitions will come hunting. Bruce, Superman said, a warning in his tone. He's not wrong, Kodai replied. We've already detected multiple sensor sweeps of our position, military satellites, private corporate scans, and something else. Energy signatures that read like, he glanced at Sonata, like transdimensional boom tube technology, the science officer confirmed. Someone's watching from Apocalypse. The temperature in the room dropped. Wonder Woman's hand moved to the hilt of her sword. Green Lantern's ring flared brighter. The Flash stopped moving entirely, which meant he was thinking at super speed about evacuation protocols. Darkseid, Batman said flatly. He'll have detected your arrival the moment you breach the dimensional barrier. If he thinks your technology could enhance his Omega effect or provide a weapon against Earth's defenders. He'll come for us, Kodai finished, which means we're not just your problem. We're your liability. Superman shook his head. You're people in need. That makes you our responsibility. He looked to Batman, to Wonder Woman, to the assembled League. We've faced worse odds. If Darkseid wants their ship, we make sure he doesn't get it. If other threats emerge, we handle them together. Clark's right, Wonder Woman said, though her tactical mind was clearly calculating threat vectors. These are warriors who fought to save their world. That's a cause I understand. A cause worth defending. But, Batman added, because there was always a but, we need protocols. Your wave motion gun doesn't fire without League approval. Your ship remains in orbital monitoring range. And you work with Cyborg and our scientists to stabilize your engine before it tears a rift that drops Apocalypse directly into Earth's atmosphere. Kodai looked to his crew. Tokugawa gave a slight nod. The engineer's acceptance of necessary oversight. Sanada's expression showed calculation and grudging respect for Batman's paranoia. Yuki's eyes held quiet understanding that they were being offered sanctuary with strings attached. Agreed, Kodai said. But understand, if Darkseid comes, if your Earth faces the kind of extinction we faced, we won't hesitate to use every weapon we have. We didn't survive our universe's apocalypse by fighting with one hand tied behind our backs. The tension crystallized. Superman's idealism, Batman's pragmatism, Wonder Woman's warrior code, the Yamato crew's desperate soldier mentality. Four philosophies of heroism meeting in a room where the wrong word could shatter a fragile alliance. It was the Flash who broke the silence, vibrating back into normal motion with his characteristic grin. So, orbital defense platform with a doom cannon crewed by interdimensional Earth soldiers? I've seen weirder Tuesdays. The laughter was brief but real. Even Batman's mouth twitched slightly. There's one more thing, Cyborg said, his expression troubled. While we've been talking, I've detected 17 separate attempts to hack the Watchtower systems, sophisticated attacks, corporate-grade encryption, all targeting intelligence on the Yamato. LexCorp signatures? Batman asked, already knowing the answer. Every single one. Lex Luthor knows you're here, Cyborg told the Yamato crew, and he's very interested in making contact. The Yamato hung in geosynchronous orbit like a steel cathedral, its blue-gray hull reflecting Earth's sunlight in ways that reminded the crew of home. In the 3 days since their arrival, Chief Engineer Tokugawa had worked around the clock with Cyborg to stabilize the wave motion engine's exotic matter reactions. The partnership was surprisingly smooth. Two engineers who spoke the universal language of problem-solving, trading theories about Tachyon emissions, and Motherbox quantum harmonics while the rest of the universe plotted around them. Captain Kodai stood on the observation deck, watching Earth rotate below. This world looked so much like the one they'd saved. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents unmarred by Gamila's radiation, but the similarities ended at aesthetics. This Earth had gods walking its streets, speedsters who broke the laws of physics for breakfast. Alien invasions repelled so routinely, the news barely covered them anymore. Beautiful, isn't it? Superman's voice carried no sound of entry. He simply appeared beside Kodai, floating cross-legged in vacuum outside the viewport, before phasing through the reinforced glass like it was suggestion rather than matter. Sorry, should have knocked. Kodai didn't reach for his sidearm, which showed remarkable restraint given a Kryptonian had just violated every security protocol. Your abilities are unsettling. I get that a lot. Superman settled onto the deck, standing like a normal man despite being anything but. I wanted to talk, not as Justice League to potential threat, nor as one soldier to another. You were military? Kryptonian Defense Council, technically, before my planet exploded. Superman's expression carried ancient grief worn smooth by decades. I was sent to Earth as an infant, raised by farmers in Kansas who taught me that power without compassion is just tyranny with better PR. He looked at the Yamato's corridors, at the crew members hurrying past on their duties. You've seen extinction, led people through it. How do you carry that weight? Kodai considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. You trust your crew. You make impossible choices and live with them. You remember that the weapon is a tool, not a solution. He met Superman's eyes. And you never ever convince yourself that you alone know what's best for everyone else. The injustice timeline, Superman said quietly. Guess you've read about it. Sanada compiled a report, alternate reality where you lost your wife and unborn child to the Joker's manipulation, where you killed the Joker and decided the only way to prevent future tragedies was absolute control. Kodai's voice held no judgment, only the tactical assessment of a man who'd studied every scenario. You became exactly what you feared, a tyrant who destroyed freedom to preserve peace. It wasn't me, Superman said, but the words carried the weight of someone who knew how close he'd come. Another version, but the capacity exists in all of us. That's why Batman keeps kryptonite, why the League has protocols to stop me if I ever cross that line. And you accept that? Knowing your closest allies have plans to kill you? I insist on it. Superman's smile was sad but genuine. Because the alternative is believing I'm incorruptible. And absolute power corrupts absolutely, Captain. No exceptions. Before Kodai could respond, Yuki's voice crackled through the intercom. Captain to the bridge. We have an incoming transmission. Priority encryption. Source identified as LexCorp Industries. Superman and Kodai exchanged glances. He's persistent, Superman said. He's dangerous, Kodai countered, already moving. Batman's intelligence briefings made that clear. Genius intellect, vast resources, deep-seated hatred of you masked as concern for humanity's autonomy. All true. Also Earth's most brilliant scientist and occasionally necessary ally. Superman followed Kodai toward the bridge. Lex believes humanity needs to stand on its own feet, not rely on alien saviors. He's not entirely wrong. His methods, though, the bridge of the Yamato was controlled chaos. Tactical displays showed LexCorp's communications satellite maintaining perfect geosynchronous position with their ship. Sonata had already analyzed the encryption, military grade but designed to be broken, an invitation disguised as security. Shima's hands hovered near weapons controls purely on instinct. On screen, Kodai ordered. Lex Luthor appeared with the perfect composition of a man who understood theater. His office overlooked Metropolis, Superman City, a deliberate power statement. The suit was immaculate. The smile was precise. But his eyes, those were the eyes of someone calculating trajectories 3 moves ahead. Captain Kodai, what a pleasure to finally speak directly. Luthor's voice carried the warmth of a corporate predator greeting prey. Now, I've been following your situation with great interest. Stranded in an unfamiliar universe, technological capabilities that exceed Earth's current infrastructure, a crew of highly trained military personnel accustomed to operating independently. He leaned forward. And I imagine Superman has already given you the speech about power and responsibility? Mr. Luthor, Kodai kept his voice neutral, we're not interested in corporate partnerships. Our arrangement with the Justice League is built on Superman's naive belief that alien technology should be freely shared with heroes who answer to no one. Luthor's facade cracked just slightly, revealing the philosophical wound beneath. Let me offer an alternative perspective. Your wave motion engine represents a revolution in energy production. Your ship's defensive systems could protect Earth from threats the Justice League can't handle alone. Your crew's military discipline could train human forces to defend ourselves instead of cowering behind Kryptonian gods. Superman floated into frame behind Kodai, and Luthor's expression shifted, still controlled, but edged with a particular hatred of a brilliant man confronting someone who made genius look effortless. Lex, Superman said evenly, they're not for sale. I'm not buying Superman. I'm offering partnership. Real partnership, not subordination to your League's ever-expanding authority. Luthor addressed Kodai directly. LexCorp can provide resources the Justice League can't or won't. Orbital facilities for your ship. Manufacturing capabilities to repair and upgrade your systems. Legal protection from governments that will demand access to your technology. And most importantly, autonomy. The freedom to make your own choices without Superman's approval. It was a compelling offer, Kodai had to admit. Everything they needed wrapped in philosophical arguments that resonated with military independence. Luthor had clearly studied their culture, their history, knew that the Yamato had operated on the edge of United Nations authority, making command decisions that saved humanity but defied political oversight. What's the price? Kodai asked, because nothing was ever free. Luthor smiled. Consultation. Your engineers work with mine, not on weapons. I know the League has you on a leash there. But energy production, propulsion systems, defensive technologies, you help humanity stand on its own feet. In return, do you get everything you need to stabilize your engine, repair your ship, maybe even find a way home. Captain, Sonata's voice came through a private channel. His offer is technically sound. LexCorp's facilities are more advanced than anything the Justice League operates publicly. If we're serious about stabilizing the wave motion engine, Luthor's resources could cut our timeline in half. Kodai watched Luthor on screen, watched Superman's tension, felt the weight of command settle heavier. This was the test Batman had warned about. Not violence, not invasion, the subtle corruption of good intentions, wrapped in logic and resources. Your concern for humanity is noted, Mr. Luthor, Kodai said carefully. But we've seen what happens when desperate soldiers make deals with brilliant civilians who hate their protectors. Yeah, the Gamillis Empire started as a partnership too. Luthor's eyes flashed. I'm trying to save humanity from dependence on alien power. What are you trying to save, Captain? The same thing you are, Kodai replied, just without convincing myself that the ends justify any means. He cut the transmission. The bridge was silent for 3 heartbeats. Then Superman released a breath he'd been holding since Luthor appeared. That took courage. Lex doesn't handle rejection well. He'll try again, Sonata observed. Different approach. Probably through intermediaries. Maybe direct contact with crew members he thinks are sympathetic to his arguments. Let him try, Kodai said. My crew survived extinction by trusting each other, not by making deals with people who see us as weapons against their enemies. Superman's expression carried something that might have been relief or respect or both. The League can provide resources, not as advanced as Luthor's maybe, but without strings attached. Everything has strings, Superman, Kodai said not unkindly. Yours are just more honest. Before Superman could respond, every alarm on the Yamato screamed simultaneously. Tactical displays erupted in threat warnings. Sonata's hands flew across his console, analyzing readings that shouldn't exist. Boom tube opening, he reported, voice tight with controlled panic. Massive energy signature, apocalypse origin. On the view screen, reality tore open like a wound. The boom tube roared into existence, a tunnel between dimensions, crackling with impossible physics. And through it came beings that made Superman's jaw clench with recognition. 6 armored figures emerged from the portal, their mother box technology superior to anything on Earth. They flew in perfect formation toward the Yamato, and even through vacuum, their intention radiated like heat. Darkseid's female Furies had come hunting. The female Furies spread across space in attack formation, a pattern perfected through millennia of conquest across 1,000 burning worlds. Big Barda led the formation, 8 feet of new god muscle and battle-hardened fury, her megarod crackling with energy that could shatter mountains. Lashina's electrified whips coiled like serpents ready to strike. Stampa's seismic boots generated localized gravity distortions, visible even in vacuum. Mad Harriet's claws gleamed with poison, designed to kill immortals. Her guillotina's blade hummed with molecular disruption fields. And Bernadette, cunning and cruel, carried the Farron knife that burned hotter than stellar cores. Yamato crew, Big Barda's voice boomed across all frequencies, amplified by motherbox technology that made radio seem primitive. Darkseid, Lord of Apocalypse, master of the anti-life equation, has taken interest in your vessel. You will surrender your ship and technology for analysis. Resistance will be punished. Compliance will be rewarded with swift death instead of prolonged agony. On the Yamato's bridge, tactical displays painted the threat in harsh red geometry. 6 new god warriors, each powerful enough to devastate armies. Shima's hands moved to weapons controls, but Sonata shook his head sharply. The math was brutal. The Fury's armor could withstand kiloton-level impacts. Standard ship weapons would barely scratch them. Captain? Tokugawa's voice crackled from engineering. Wave motion gun charge time is 18 minutes. We're not ready for this. Superman was already moving, a red and blue streak accelerating to speeds that made relativity weep. He intercepted Big Barda 300 meters from the Yamato's hull, and the impact of their collision sent shockwaves rippling through nearby debris. Barda, Superman said, holding her mega rod with one hand while his other pressed against her chest plate, preventing forward momentum. You don't want to do this. Kryptonian. Barda's voice carried grudging respect beneath the contempt. Darkseid anticipated your interference. He sends his regards and a message. The Yamato's technology will be ours. Whether we claim it from intact vessel or scattered wreckage. Your choice determines only the body count. She twisted, using leverage Superman hadn't expected, and her mega rod discharged at point-blank range. The energy blast would have vaporized a mountain. Superman absorbed it, felt his cells drink solar radiation, converted to kinetic force, and returned the favor with a punch that sent Barda tumbling backward through space. The other Furies engaged immediately. Lashina's electrified whips lashed out toward the Yamato's sensor array, not to destroy the ship, but to demonstrate Darkseid's reach. The whips never connected. Green Lantern Hal Jordan materialized between them and the vessel, emerald constructs forming a shield that caught the energy attacks and redirected them harmlessly into the void. "Hey, ladies," Hal said with his characteristic cocky grin. "Hate to break up your home invasion, but this ship's under Justice League protection, which means you're going home empty-handed, or empty-clawed. Whatever." Stampa's answer was to activate her seismic boots in mid-flight, generating a localized shock wave that rippled through space-time itself. The distortion wave hit Hal's shield like a hammer, and the Green Lantern gritted his teeth as his ring flared, willpower against cosmic force. Inside the Yamato, Kodai made the calculation every commander dreads. The Justice League was engaging, but the Furies had come for his ship specifically. Waiting for rescue meant letting others fight his battles. But engaging meant revealing capabilities Darkseid wanted, showing the Lord of Apocalypse exactly how the wave motion technology functioned under stress. "Launch the Cosmo Zero Squadron," he ordered. "Combat air patrol. They're not taking this ship without a fight." "Captain," Yuki's voice carried warning, "our fighters aren't designed for opponents like this. The Furies will tear through them. Which is why they're not engaging the Furies directly. Shima, target the boom tube portal. If we can collapse it, we cut off their escape route and any reinforcements Darkseid might send." Sonata's fingers danced across his console, running calculations faster than the ship's computer could verify. "The boom tube's dimensional anchor is quantum locked. We'd need to hit it with a massive energy discharge to—" His eyes widened. "The wave motion gun. Even a partial charge might destabilize it." 18 minutes, Tokugawa reminded them from engineering. "Then we buy 18 minutes, Kodai said. The Yamato's launch bays opened, and 12 Cosmo Zero fighters screamed into the void. Each pilot had flown through impossible odds, navigating asteroid fields at relativistic speeds, dogfighting Gamila's carriers, while Earth died behind them. They knew their spacecraft were outmatched. They launched anyway, because that's what the Yamato crew did. They fought when fighting was hopeless. They flew when survival was impossible. They chose courage over calculation." Mad Harriet saw the fighters coming and laughed. The sound transmitted across open channels like fingernails on a chalkboard. She accelerated toward the lead Cosmo Zero with claws extended. "I'm moving at speeds that should have made interception trivial." The pilot, Lieutenant Yamamoto, who'd once flown through a supernova's corona on a scouting run, didn't try to outrun her. He cut thrust, rotated 90 degrees, and fired his plasma cannons in a spread pattern that turned his vector into a kill zone. Mad Harriet twisted through the barrage with new god reflexes, but the maneuver forced her off course, buying precious seconds. "These humans have skill," Bernadette observed, her Farron knife burning as she analyzed the fighter's formation. "They fly like apocalypse cadets who survived their first culling." "Then we'll cull them properly," Gilatina replied, her molecular disruption blade extending. But before the Furies could swarm the fighters, Wonder Woman arrived like divine wrath given form. She materialized from the Watchtower's transporter beam already in motion, her god-killer sword drawn, her bracers catching starlight. Diana of Themyscira had fought in wars before humanity learned to write. She'd dueled Ares himself. The female Furies were skilled. She'd grant them that respect. But they weren't gods. Her sword met Gilatina's blade in a clash that generated electromagnetic pulses visible from Earth. The molecular disruption field sparked against divinely forged metal and found itself wanting. Wonder Woman's combat style was 3 millennia of Amazon warfare compressed into brutal efficiency. She used Gilatina's momentum against her, redirecting the new god strike and slamming her bracered forearm into Gilatina's helmet hard enough to crack the faceplate. "You defend human technology so fiercely, Amazon?" Gilatina spat. recovering her stance. Has Paradise Island fallen so far that its princess serves mortal machines? I defend warriors who fight for their people, Diana replied, her lasso of truth coiling at her hip. Something Apocalypse has forgotten in its endless hunger for conquest. The battle expanded across three-dimensional space. Superman and Big Barda traded blows that released energy equivalent to tactical nuclear strikes. The Flash arrived in a crackling burst of Speed Force lightning, vibrating through Lashina's whip attacks and delivering rapid-fire strikes faster than New God neurons could process. Cyborg boom tube directly onto Stampa's back, his white noise cannon disrupting her gravity boots harmonics. On the Yamato's bridge, Sonata tracked the engagement with growing concern. The Furies are testing us, he reported. They're not committing to full assault. They're studying our response, analyzing Justice League tactics, measuring the ship's defensive capabilities. Which means Darkseid's playing a longer game, Kodai said. This isn't invasion, it's reconnaissance. Captain, Tokugawa's voice cut through the tactical chatter. Wave motion gun charging sequence complete. We can fire in 90 seconds. Kodai looked at the boom tube portal, still pulsing with Apocalypse energy. One shot could collapse it, strand the Furies. Send a message to Darkseid that the Yamato wasn't helpless prey, but it would also reveal their ultimate weapon's full capability to a god who specialized in turning enemies' strengths against them. The command decision crystallized. Sometimes the smartest tactical choice was restraint. Hold fire, Kodai ordered. Yoa, keep the gun charged but don't reveal it. Shima, redirect all power to defensive shields. Make them think we're purely defensive. Your gambling Darkseid will respect caution? Sonata asked. I'm gambling he'll respect survivors, Kodai replied. We didn't last 148,000 light-years by showing our best weapons first. In space, Big Barda caught Superman's fist and held it. An impressive feat of new god strength. Their faces were inches apart, her helmet cracked from his earlier strike, his cape streaming with solar wind. You can't protect them forever, Kryptonian, she said. Darkseid's interest doesn't wane. These humans carry technology that threatens the natural order. They will be acquired. Today, tomorrow. And/or when you're busy saving one of the 1,000 other threats your pathetic planet attracts? Then he'll have to go through me every single time, Superman replied. And every time he fails, he proves he's not the god he claims to be. Barda's expression shifted. Something that might have been respect or pity, or both. Your conviction is admirable. Your tactics are predictable. She triggered her mother box, and the boom tube portal surged with new energy. We withdraw, but understand. This was observation, not assault. When Darkseid truly moves against this vessel, you'll know the difference. The Furies disengaged simultaneously, their coordination speaking to years fighting as a unit. They retreated through the boom tube in perfect formation, and the portal collapsed with a thunderclap of displaced dimensions. Silence settled across the orbital battlefield. The Cosmo Zero fighters returned to their bays, pilots breathing hard, adrenaline fading into the shakes. The Justice League regrouped around the Yamato, checking for damage, analyzing threat patterns. Superman floated beside the bridge viewport again, his expression troubled. They could have pressed the attack. Big Barda's fought me to stand still before. With the full Fury team, they might have overwhelmed us. They weren't here to win, Kodai said, understanding crystallizing. They were here to make Darkseid's interests known, to prove he can reach us whenever he wants, to force us to live under that threat. Psychological warfare, Batman's voice crackled over the comms from the watchtower. Classic Darkseid. He's patient. He'll wait until we're distracted, weakened, or divided. Then he'll take what he wants. In engineering, Tokugawa powered down the wave motion gun, and the exotic matter reactions stabilized. The weapon had been ready. They'd chosen not to fire. That choice would ripple forward in ways none of them could predict. How long until Darkseid makes his real move? Yuki asked quietly. Kodai watched Earth rotate below, so beautiful and fragile and alive. However long it takes for him to find our weakness, he replied, our job is to make sure that weakness isn't each other. The watchtower's medical bay hummed with technology that blended Kryptonian crystal matrices, Thanagarian biotechnology, and cutting-edge human engineering. Lieutenant Yamamoto sat on an examination table, while Martian manhunter John Jones conducted a telepathic scan, his red eyes glowing softly as he mapped the pilot's neural pathways for combat stress indicators. Your people have endured significant trauma, John observed, his voice carrying the gentle weight of someone who'd watched his own world burn. The psychic echoes of watching Earth die are profound, yet you function with remarkable cohesion. Yamato managed a tired smile. We had each other, and we had a mission. When you're traveling 148,000 light years with humanity's survival on your shoulders, you either break together or hold together. We chose to hold. 3 days since the Furies reconnaissance. 3 days of uneasy calm while Cyborg and Tokugawa worked 16-hour shifts stabilizing the wave motion engine. 3 days of Superman visiting the Yamato daily, ostensibly to check defensive protocols, but really to understand warriors who carry doomsday power without letting it define them. 3 days of Batman cataloging every system, every capability, every potential point of failure, not out of malice, but because preparing for the worst was how he kept people alive. In the Yamato's wardroom, Captain Kodai sat across from Wonder Woman, sharing tea in a ritual that transcended cultures. Diana had brought the blend from Themyscira, herbs that grew only on Paradise Island, steeped in water blessed by Hera herself. The Amazon princess understood warriors better than most of the League. She led armies, made impossible choices, killed when necessary, and carried those deaths like stones in her soul. Your crew respects you, she observed, but they also fear disappointing you. That's the mark of a commander who's led through genuine crisis, not simulation. They've earned the right to question my orders, Kodai replied. Sanada's challenged me 3 times on major tactical decisions. Yuki's navigation instincts have overridden my commands when her calculations prove superior. Tokugawa's argued against engine stress I thought was necessary. He sipped the tea, tasting honey and something floral he couldn't identify. Good leaders know they're not infallible. Great crews make leaders better. Yet you carry the wave motion gun's burden alone, Diana said. The final decision to fire or hold fire. Your crew executes, but you live with the choice. I recognize that isolation, Captain. I've worn the crown of Themyscira. I've given orders that sent sisters to die for the greater good. Her ancient eyes held compassion earned through millennia. How do you prevent that power from corrupting your judgment? It was the question everyone kept asking in different forms. Superman's gentle probing about absolute power, Batman's cold analysis of decision-making patterns, Cyborg's concerned observations about crew loyalty bordering on unquestioning obedience. Even Lex Luthor's offer had carried the implicit suggestion that such power needed civilian oversight. I remember what we were fighting for, Kodai said finally. Not victory, not glory, survival. 8 billion lives that would end if we failed. Every time I considered using the wave motion gun, I asked myself, is this genuinely our only option? Or am I choosing easy destruction over difficult strategy? He met Diana's gaze. The gun fired exactly 4 times during our journey. 4 times when tactical analysis confirmed no alternative existed. We could have used it dozens more times, cut through enemy fleets, obliterated obstacles, made our mission simpler. We didn't, because the moment we start believing overwhelming force solves every problem, we stop being heroes and become the threat we're fighting. Diana nodded slowly. You would have made a fine Amazon, Captain Kodai. Before Kodai could respond, the Watchtower's priority alert system activated. Red lights strobed through corridors. Joan's telepathic presence swept across the station, touching every League member's mind with urgent summons. In the Yamato's bridge, tactical displays erupted with contact warnings. Kodai was running before his communicator finished chirping. Report! Multiple bogies entering Earth's atmosphere. Sonata's voice was tightly controlled professional panic. Trajectory suggests uncontrolled descent. Composition analysis shows, Captain, they're organic. Living creatures, thousands of them. In the Watchtower Command Center, Cyborg's holographic displays painted a nightmare scenario across Earth's globe. Meteorites were raining down across 6 continents, but these weren't rock and ice. They pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. They steered mid-descent, seeking population centers with deliberate intelligence. Starro, Batman said flatly, and the single word carried the weight of previous invasions. He's back. Superman's jaw clenched. Us how many? Preliminary counts suggest 12,000 individual spores, Cyborg reported, each one capable of spawning a central command node. If they reach population centers and start replicating, he didn't need to finish. Everyone in the room had read the after-action reports from Starro's last invasion attempt. The flash vibrated with barely contained urgency. People we can save. Millions if we move now, Batman said. Zero if we waste time talking. The Justice League mobilized with practiced efficiency. Superman streaked toward the largest cluster hitting Metropolis. Wonder Woman boom-tubed to Paris, where 3 spores were descending on the City of Lights. Green Lantern created a hard light net across Tokyo's airspace. The Flash evacuated 12 city blocks in Keystone City faster than the spores could descend. So Cyborg coordinated from the Watchtower, his mother box technology tracking every trajectory, calculating impact zones, directing League response. On the Yamato, Kodai watched his tactical display populate with threat markers and made the decision commanders make when their people are trained, equipped, and willing. Launch all fighters, he ordered. Any spore that makes it past Justice League response gets intercepted before landfall. Torpedoes loaded with incendiary payloads. Starro's vulnerable to intense heat. Shima, bring us into low orbit. We're joining this fight. Captain, Yuki's voice carried hesitation. The Justice League hasn't requested our assistance. They're stretched across 6 continents with thousands of targets, Kodai replied. Pride doesn't save civilians. Launch the fighters. The Cosmo Zero Squadron deployed like silver wasps, their pilots adapting to atmospheric combat with the flexibility born from flying through nebula storms and asteroid fields. Lieutenant Yamato led Alpha Flight toward a cluster of spores descending on Mumbai. The alien organisms pulsed with hideous life, starfish-shaped masses the size of cars, trailing tentacles that would attach to human faces and seize control of nervous systems. Yamamoto's targeting computer painted the lead spore in his crosshairs. He fired, and incendiary torpedoes traced brilliant lines across Mumbai's evening sky. The first spore burst into flames, its organic matter combusting like napalm. The second dodged with disturbing intelligence, but Beta Flight was already there, bracketing it with crossfire that turned alien flesh to ash. When in Metropolis, Superman caught 3 spores simultaneously, crushing them with Kryptonian strength before they could spawn. But for every 3 he stopped, 5 more evaded his grip, splitting and weaving with intelligence that suggested coordinated control. One latched onto a police officer's face before Superman could intervene, and he watched with horror as the man's eyes glazed, his will subsumed by the alien intelligence that now wore his body like a glove. Cyborg, Superman's voice crackled with controlled fury. We need a solution beyond whack-a-mole. Where's the control node? Where's Starro Prime? Scanning, Cyborg replied, his systems processing terabytes of biological data. The spores are receiving coordinated commands, which means there's a central intelligence directing. His holographic displays shifted, highlighting an energy signature emerging from the Atlantic Ocean. There, mid-Atlantic ridge, something massive is rising from the seafloor. The thing that breached the ocean's surface was the stuff of H.P. Lovecraft's nightmares, given flesh and purpose. Starro the Conqueror towered 300 feet tall, a starfish god pulsing with bioluminescent malevolence. Thousands of tentacles writhed beneath its central mass. Its single eye, massive, alien, utterly devoid of mercy, surveyed the surface world it had come to claim. I have conquered galaxies, the telepathic voice boomed across every mind on Earth, crushing individual thought beneath its weight. I have subjugated civilizations that span star systems. Your Earth will join the collective. Your minds will serve the one. Aquaman was already there, rising from the depths with Atlantean warriors at his back. His trident crackled with mystical energy as he drove it towards Starro's central mass. The weapon struck true, piercing alien flesh, but Starro's tentacles whipped forward faster than human eyes could track. They caught Aquaman mid-thrust and slammed him into the ocean with force that generated a tsunami wave. Arthur! Wonder Woman's voice crackled across the comm network as she changed trajectory, abandoning Paris to aid the King of Atlantis. Negative, Batman's tactical assessment cut through. Diana, stay on your vector. Starro's playing divide and conquer. He's baiting us to leave population centers undefended while we engage the primary body. On the Yamato's bridge, Sonata ran calculations that made his hands shake. Captain, you are in that organism's central mass is approximately 300 meters tall. Targeting solution for wave motion gun is optimal, Kodai finished. One shot, full power. We could vaporize the control node and sever the hive mind connection. The bridge went silent. Every crew member understood the implications. The wave motion gun had never been fired in front of the Justice League, never demonstrated its full planet-cracking capability. This would reveal everything, show Earth's heroes and villains exactly what the Yamato carried, prove to Darkseid that the weapon worked as his intelligence suggested, confirm Lex Luthor's worst fears about unregulated doomsday devices in orbit. But it would also save millions of lives. Stop an alien invasion in one stroke. Prove the Yamato crew wasn't dead weight hiding behind Justice League protection. Tokugawa, Kodai said quietly, charge the wave motion gun. Full power. Target Starro Prime's central mass. Charging sequence initiated, the engineer replied, and throughout the ship, exotic matter reactions began cascading through the wave motion engine. Energy levels climbed exponentially. The bow of the Yamato began to glow with building power. In the watchtower, Cyborg's sensors screamed warnings. Batman, the Yamato is charging their primary weapon. Energy output is... Jesus Christ, Bruce. That's stellar core level. If they fire that thing, they'll solve our Starro problem, Batman finished, or vaporize half the Atlantic and trigger a global extinction event if their targeting is off by a fraction of a degree. Superman was already accelerating toward the Yamato, leaving Metropolis's remaining spores for local heroes to handle. And he had seconds to decide. Trust warriors he barely knew with a weapon that could end worlds, or stop them and condemn millions to Starro's mental slavery. The choice crystallized as he watched Lieutenant Yamamoto's fighter squadron working in perfect coordination with Green Lantern to save Mumbai's citizens. As he remembered Kodai's words about firing the gun only 4 times in 148,000 light years. As he recognized in these desperate soldiers the same thing he saw in his own mirror, people who carried terrible power and chose restraint over expedience. Superman changed trajectory. Instead of intercepting the Yamato, he dove towards Starro Prime with every ounce of Kryptonian might. On the Yamato's bridge, the wave motion gun reached critical charge. Targeting computers locked onto Starro's central eye. The countdown ticked towards 0. "Tonight, Captain," Yuki said softly. "If we fire, everything changes. Darkseid will know. Luthor will know. Everyone will know what we can do." Kodai's hand hovered over the firing authorization. "Then let them know we're not helpless. Fire." The wave motion gun's firing sequence was beautiful and terrible in equal measure. The Yamato's bow split open like a flower of steel and death, revealing the massive barrel that had carried them across impossible distances. Energy cascaded through exotic matter conduits, tachyon emissions bleeding purple-white light that made nearby satellites flicker and fail. The buildup was visible from Earth's surface, a second sun igniting in orbit, growing brighter with each passing second. Superman reached Starro Prime 3 seconds before the Yamato fired. His heat vision lanced out at maximum intensity, one twin beams of concentrated solar fury that could melt through neutronium. They struck Starro's central eye, and the alien god screamed telepathically across every connected mind on Earth. Tentacles longer than skyscrapers whipped toward Superman with crushing force. He caught 2, muscles straining against alien strength that had conquered galaxies. His grip crushed through bioorganic tissue, tearing tentacles free in sprays of luminescent ichor. But there were dozens more, and Starro's hive mind was learning, adapting, focusing processing power from thousands of enslaved humans to predict Kryptonian movement patterns. A tentacle slammed into Superman's ribs hard enough to crack bone that could withstand nuclear detonations. He spun through the air, regained control, and accelerated back into the fray. But even Kryptonian endurance had limits, and Starro was rage and hunger given form. "Superman!" Batman's voice cut through the tactical channel with characteristic calm, despite analyzing an unwinnable scenario. "You can't hold it alone. Pull back." Let the Yamato take the shot. Civilians in the blast radius, Superman grunted, tearing through another tentacle. Aquaman's Atlantean forces are still extracting from the impact zone. Diana's evacuation corridor isn't complete. We need another 30 seconds. The Yamato's holding fire, Cyborg reported, his sensors tracking the orbital warship's power buildup, reaching critical levels. They're waiting. Captain Kodai is waiting for Superman's signal. On the Yamato's bridge, every warning system screamed that holding the wave motion gun at full charge risked catastrophic overload. Tokugawa's voice crackled from engineering with barely controlled panic. Captain, we're at 107% capacity. The exotic matter containment is fluctuating. We fire now or we shut down. No middle ground. Kodai watched his tactical display paint Superman's desperate battle in harsh geometry. Watched Wonder Woman herding the last Atlantean warriors clear of the blast zone. Watched Green Lantern's hard-light constructs shielding evacuation ships. 28 seconds. 29. 30. Superman caught Starro's central eye in his grip, his fingers crushing into alien flesh, and tore himself free of the writhing tentacles with pure Kryptonian strength. He flew straight up, pulling away from the creature's mass, and his voice echoed across every league channel. Fire! Fire now! Firing, Kodai said, and Shima's hand slammed down on the authorization trigger. The wave motion gun spoke with the voice of dying stars. A beam of concentrated exotic matter energy lanced from the Yamato's bow, crossing the distance between orbital platform and ocean surface in 0.3 seconds. The air itself ionized along the beam's path, creating a corridor of superheated plasma that turned night into day across the Atlantic seaboard. The ocean flash-boiled in a cone extending outward from impact, generating steam explosions that would be visible from space for hours. The beam struck Starro Prime's central mass with energy output equivalent to a strategic thermonuclear arsenal delivered in a single coherent pulse. Alien flesh that had evolved to withstand the crushing pressures of deep space, that had survived stellar radiation and cosmic rays, simply ceased to exist. The creature's central eye vaporized, its massive body convulsed once, neural pathways overloading faster than its distributed intelligence could process. Starro the Conqueror died screaming into every mind it had touched. Across 6 continents, 12,000 spores lost their connection to the hive mind simultaneously. Enslaved humans collapsed as alien tissue withered and fell from their faces like dead leaves. The spores that had been moments from achieving critical mass simply stopped functioning, their complex biorhythms dependent on commands that would never come again. In Metropolis, a police officer blinked back to consciousness with the Starro spore smoking on the pavement beside him and Superman's hand steadying his shoulder. In Mumbai, Lieutenant Yamamoto watched 3 spores falling from the sky like rain, lifeless tissue burning up in atmospheric friction. In Paris, Wonder Woman caught a falling child whose father was just waking from alien mind control, tears streaming down both their faces. The wave motion gun's beam cut off after 2.7 seconds of sustained fire. The Yamato's exotic matter reserves had dropped to 34% capacity. Emergency cooling systems flooded through the weapon's barrel, and in orbit, the entire Justice League and every monitoring station on Earth had just witnessed what the space battleship Yamato could do when it chose to show its teeth. The silence that followed was deafening. Batman spoke first, his voice carefully neutral. Confirmed kill on primary target. Starro's central mass is gone. Wave residual spore activity dropping to 0 across all continents. A pause then. That was precise. Surgical, Cyborg added, his voice carrying professional respect despite the implications. You hit Starro's neural cluster dead center. 6-meter margin of error on a 300-meter target from orbital range, with a weapon outputting stellar core energy levels. That's not luck. That's training. Superman floated in the space where Starro had died, staring at the churning Atlantic waters below. The creature had been vaporized so completely that even its massive body left minimal debris. One shot, one impossibly powerful, terrifyingly accurate shot had ended a threat that would have enslaved Earth's entire population within hours. Wonder Woman's voice carried across the comm channel with the weight of 3,000 years of warfare. Captain Kodai, that was perhaps the finest exhibition of restrained firepower I have witnessed in 3 millennia. You waited. Even with your weapon at critical overload, you waited for civilian evacuation. That is honor. On the Yamato's bridge, Kodai released a breath he'd been holding since the firing sequence began. His hands were steady despite the adrenaline crash starting to hit. Around him, his crew maintained their post with professional discipline, even as the magnitude of what they'd just revealed settled in. Status report, he said quietly. Wave motion gun operating within normal parameters. Tokugawa replied. Exotic matter reserves depleted but regenerating. We can't fire again for minimum 6 hours. Hull integrity at 100%. No casualties. Cosmo Zero Squadron returning to base, Yuki added. All pilots accounted for. A Mumbai defensive action successful with 0 civilian casualties. Sanada looked up from his console, his analytical mind already processing strategic implications. Captain, we just demonstrated our full capability to everyone watching. Every intelligence agency on Earth, every hero, every villain. Darkseid will have seen this. Lex Luthor certainly did. We're no longer an unknown quantity. Good, Kodai said, surprising his science officer. Let them know we're not weapons waiting for someone else to aim us. We're warriors who make our own choices about when to fight and when to hold fire. The Watchtower's transporter beam deposited Superman on the Yamato's bridge 3 minutes later. The Kryptonian's uniform was scorched from Starro's attacks, minor lacerations already healing under his invulnerable skin. But his eyes held something beyond gratitude. Recognition. The kind that passed between soldiers who'd stood back to back against overwhelming odds. You saved millions of lives today, Superman said simply. Thank you. Kodai stood from his command chair. You trusted us to take the shot. That took courage too. Or calculated risk assessment, Batman's voice crackled through Superman's comlink because the Dark Knight was constitutionally incapable of leaving sentiment unexamined. I'm reading the Yamato's energy signatures. That weapon could have turned Earth's Atlantic seaboard into a glass crater if your targeting had been off by a fraction. You bet the planet on your crew's precision. We did, Kodai acknowledged, because precision is what we do. The wave motion gun isn't a terror weapon. It's a last resort executed with surgical care. Today qualified as last resort. Superman nodded slowly. The Justice League owes you. Earth owes you. But, and here his expression carried the weight of someone who'd seen friends corrupted by far less power. That weapon makes you a target. Every villain who witnessed that display is going to want it. Darkseid most of all. Let them come, Shima said from the helm, speaking for the first time since the firing sequence. We didn't survive 148,000 light years by running from threats. Before Superman could respond, every screen on the Yamato's bridge flickered. Static washed across displays. And then a face appeared, not transmitted through standard channels but burned directly into the ship's systems through technology that made Cyborg's motherbox integration look primitive. One of the face was stone carved into malevolence, eyes that burned with Omega fire, a presence that radiated absolute dominion even through electronic mediation. Darkseid. Captain Kodai, the voice carried the weight of crushed civilizations. Your demonstration was enlightening. The weapon you wield could threaten even new gods if applied with sufficient strategic brilliance. I would speak with you, alone, away from Kryptonian interference and Justice League oversight. Superman moved to place himself between the screen and Kodai, but the captain raised a hand. What do you want, Darkseid? To offer you a choice, Darkseid replied, and something that might have been amusement flickered in those burning eyes. The Justice League sees you as allies. Lex Luthor sees you as assets. I see you as what you truly are. Warriors who understand that overwhelming force, properly applied, can reshape reality itself. Join me. Bring your vessel to Apocalypse. I will provide resources to repair your dimensional displacement, technology to return you home, power to ensure your Earth never faces extinction again. In exchange for what? Sanada asked, his analytical mind already calculating the impossible equations Darkseid was proposing. Service, Darkseid said simply. The wave motion gun as my instrument. Your crew's tactical brilliance in my campaigns. Together, we could bring order to a chaotic multiverse. No more desperate escapes through dimensional rifts. No more watching worlds die. Just absolute power wielded with absolute precision. It was the offer every desperate soldier dreamed about. The promise that their sacrifices could mean something larger. That their weapon could end all wars instead of fighting one endless battle after another. The temptation that had turned Superman into a tyrant in another timeline. That corrupted heroes across infinite realities. Kodai met Darkseid's burning gaze through the screen without flinching. "We built the wave motion gun to save our Earth," he said quietly, "not to conquer others. The answer is no." Darkseid's expression didn't change. "You choose servitude to Superman's naive idealism over partnership with true power. Disappointing, but predictable. Know this, Captain. When I next move against your vessel, it will not be reconnaissance. It will be acquisition. You have shown me your capability. Now I will show you mine." The transmission cut off. Every screen returned to normal. And in the silence that followed, everyone on the bridge understood that the temporary safety they'd enjoyed had just evaporated. Darkseid had made his intention clear. The Yamato wasn't just a curiosity anymore. It was a target. The emergency session of the Justice League convened in the Watchtower's war room 6 hours after Darkseid's transmission. The chamber was designed for exactly this kind of crisis. Holographic displays showing threat assessments, satellite feeds monitoring Apocalypse's current position in the distant cosmos, and enough tactical data to plan for scenarios ranging from conventional invasion to reality-ending catastrophe. Captain Kodai stood before the assembled heroes with his senior staff. Sanada, Yuki, Tokugawa, and Shima formed a disciplined line that spoke to military bearing honed through impossible trials. Across from them sat Earth's greatest defenders, and the contrast in philosophy was stark as continental divide. Superman leaned forward, his expression carrying the weight of someone who'd made similar choices and lived with the consequences. Darkseid doesn't make empty threats. When he says acquisition, he means he'll send everything, parademon armies, the full complement of Furies, possibly even come himself. Your ship won't survive that kind of assault. Which is why we're proposing you surrender the wave motion gun to Justice League custody, Batman said, and the bluntness was deliberate, cutting through diplomatic niceties to expose the core issue. We secure the weapon. You and your crew receive asylum, resources to research dimensional travel home, and protection from Darkseid's forces. The gun stays offline until genuine extinction-level threats emerge. The Yamato crew's reaction was immediate and unified. Shima's hand moved unconsciously toward his sidearm. Tokugawa's jaw clenched hard enough to crack teeth. Yuki's diplomatic mask slipped, revealing the steel beneath. Sanada's analytical calm fractured into barely controlled fury. Kodai raised one hand, and his crew settled, not because of rank, but because of trust earned through shared sacrifice. When he spoke, his voice carried the controlled calm of someone delivering a non-negotiable position. "No. Captain," Wonder Woman began. "No," Kodai repeated more firmly. "The Yamato isn't a weapon. It's our ship, our home. The wave motion gun is integrated into every system. Life support, propulsion, defensive shields. You can't separate it without gutting the vessel entirely. And even if you could, we wouldn't allow it." "Even if it means Darkseid destroys you?" Green Lantern asked, his ring glowing with genuine concern rather than threat. "I get pride, Captain. But this is suicide by stubbornness." "Is it?" Sanada stepped forward, his scientist's mind cutting through emotion to tactical reality. "Let's analyze this objectively. Darkseid wants the wave motion technology. If we surrender the gun to Justice League custody, he simply redirects his assault to wherever you're storing it. The Watchtower becomes his target. Earth's orbital defenses get caught in the crossfire. You gain a weapon you've declared you won't use except under extreme circumstances. And we lose the only leverage keeping Apocalypse from simply crushing us." Batman's expression didn't change, but his fingers drummed once against the conference table. A tell that meant Sanada's logic had struck home. "You're proposing mutually assured destruction. Keep the gun operational so Darkseid knows attacking you means facing his full power." "Deterrence," Tokugawa said. "Same principle that kept our Earth's nations from nuclear war for 70 years before Gamillis. Nobody fires if everyone knows firing means annihilation." Except Darkseid isn't deterred by annihilation threats, Cyborg countered, holographic data appearing above the table. He's faced the entire Green Lantern Corps, the new gods of New Genesis, and the combined might of the Justice League simultaneously. He doesn't care about casualties. Well, he cares about victory. Then we make victory too expensive, Kodai said. We fortify. We prepare. We make clear that taking the Yamato means Darkseid pays a price even he can't afford. The Flash vibrated into visibility beside Superman's chair, having spent the last 30 seconds circling the table at super speed while thinking through scenarios. Okay, playing devil's advocate. What if you're right? What if keeping the gun makes you too dangerous to attack directly? Darkseid adapts. He doesn't hit you with overwhelming force. He goes subtle. Infiltration, sabotage, turning your crew against each other. He's got millennia of experience breaking warrior cultures from within. Then we trust each other, Yuki said simply. The same way we trusted each other when Earth was dying and the mission was impossible. The same way we trusted Captain Kodai to fire the wave motion gun only when necessary, not because it was expedient. Trust isn't a weakness, Flash. It's the only thing that kept us human when the universe tried to make us monsters. Wonder Woman stood, her 3,000 years of tactical experience recognizing warrior philosophy when she heard it. I understand your position, Captain Kodai. I've commanded forces who refused to surrender their weapons because doing so meant surrendering their identity. But understanding doesn't mean agreement. If Darkseid comes for you with his full might, the Justice League will defend you. That defense will cost lives. League members, Yamato crew, potentially millions of civilians caught in the crossfire. Are you willing to accept that cost? The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Yet this was the moral calculus that separated idealistic heroism from command-level decision-making. Kodai had made choices like this before. Sacrifice the few to save the many, risk everything on a desperate gambit, accept casualties as inevitable cost of warfare. But this was different. This was choosing to maintain capability, knowing it painted targets on everyone who stood beside them. 3 days ago, Kodai said quietly, Starro was enslaving millions. The Justice League was stretched across 6 continents fighting spores. Superman was being crushed by a creature that conquered galaxies. We fired the wave motion gun and ended the threat in one shot. He met Wonder Woman's ancient gaze without flinching. If we'd surrendered the gun to your custody 3 days ago, how many more would have died while you debated whether the circumstances qualified as genuine extinction-level threat? Superman's expression flickered. Recognition of a truth he didn't want to acknowledge. The Justice League operated by consensus, by ethical debate, by careful consideration of every alternative. Those principles were admirable. They were also slow, and in crisis situations, slow meant body counts. You're arguing you need independent strike capability, Batman said, authority to engage threats without League approval. I'm arguing we've earned the right to make our own tactical decisions, Kodai replied. We're not children who need supervision. We're soldiers who've proven we can carry ultimate power without letting it corrupt us. The injustice timeline proves that's not always true, Superman said softly. I've seen what happens when good people with ultimate power start believing they alone know best. With respect, Superman, Sonata said, the injustice timeline proves what happens when one person carries all the power. The Yamato crew is 368 souls who vote, debate, and check each other's judgment. Captain Kodai can't fire the wave motion gun alone. He needs Shima at tactical, Tokugawa in engineering, myself confirming targeting solutions, Yuki navigating approach vectors. Our weapon requires cooperation. Your power is yours alone. The comparison struck like a physical blow. Superman's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue because the logic was sound. Kryptonian power was inherently individual. The wave motion gun was inherently collective, which meant corruption required collective failure rather than individual weakness. Before anyone could respond, every alert system in the watchtower screamed simultaneously. Cyborg's holographic displays erupted with data streams. Batman was on his feet instantly, tactical mind already processing threat vectors. Superman's eyes went distant as his super hearing picked up something the sensors hadn't yet confirmed. Boom tubes opening, Cyborg reported, his voice tight. Multiple signatures, not apocalypse origin. Signature matches, his eyes widened. Lex Luthor's private research facility in Antarctica. He's been reverse engineering boom tube technology. The holographic display shifted, showing a dozen portals tearing open across Earth's major cities. But instead of parademons, what emerged was worse. LexCorp security forces in advanced combat armor, moving with military precision to secure perimeters around each portal. And through the largest portal, in Metropolis's downtown financial district, stepped Lex Luthor himself. He wore a suit that cost more than most people's yearly salary. His smile was the precise calibration of a man who'd planned this moment down to the nanosecond. Justice League, Luthor's voice transmitted across every major network simultaneously, hijacking satellites with technology that made government encryption look like children's locks. I'm invoking Article 7 of the Meta-Crisis Contingency Act. As a private citizen witnessing extraterrestrial technology with planet-destroying capability operating in Earth's orbital space without oversight, I'm exercising my legal right to request immediate investigation and potential seizure. Batman's hands flew across his console. The Metacrisis Act was passed after the Thanagarian invasion. It gives civilian authorities power to intervene when alien technology threatens Earth's sovereignty. His voice carried grudging respect for Luthor's legal maneuvering. He's using human law to do what Darkseid couldn't, force us to hand over the Yamato. Can he do that? The Flash asked. He can try, Wonder Woman said, her hand moving to her lasso. The act was designed for genuine threats, not corporate power plays. Which is why I've brought evidence, Luthor continued, and holographic displays appeared above Metropolis, showing the wave motion gun's firing sequence from multiple angles. This weapon fired into Earth's ocean with energy output equivalent to strategic nuclear arsenal. It vaporized a 300-meter target and boiled several cubic kilometers of seawater, all without United Nations approval, environmental impact studies, or civilian oversight. He turned to face the nearest camera, speaking directly to billions watching worldwide. The Justice League operates with minimal accountability. Now they're sheltering a warship that could end civilization with one trigger pull. Is that acceptable? Public opinion was shifting in real time. Cyborg monitored social media feeds showing fear spreading like wildfire. The Starro victory that had seemed heroic yesterday now looked terrifying through Luthor's framing. A weapon powerful enough to vaporize an alien god could vaporize cities just as easily. On the Yamato, Captain Kodai watched Luthor's performance with growing understanding. He's not trying to seize the ship. He's making it politically impossible for the Justice League to protect us, forcing them to choose between public trust and defending foreign military assets. Elegant, Sonata admitted grimly. Darkseid uses force. Luthor uses fear. Different tactics, same goal. Superman's communicator erupted with priority channels, government officials demanding answers, UN representatives invoking treaty obligations, world leaders asking whether the Justice League had truly authorized a planet-destroying weapon in Earth's orbit. And through it all, Lex Luthor stood in Metropolis's financial district with boom tubes at his back and corporate security forces at his command, offering Earth's terrified population exactly what they desperately wanted: protection from the protectors who'd just proven they could end the world. Captain Kodai, Batman's voice carried the weight of impossible choices. Luthor's forcing a play. We can fight him, breach the Metacrisis Act, operate outside human legal authority, prove his point about league accountability, or we can comply with investigation protocols and risk your ship falling into his hands through legal maneuvering. Kodai looked at his crew, saw determination in Shima's eyes, analytical calculation in Sonata's expression, quiet strength in Yuki's posture, engineering pride in Tokugawa's stance. They'd faced this choice before: surrender capability and hope for mercy, or fight for autonomy and accept the consequences. We don't surrender, he said quietly. And we don't run. We prove Luthor wrong the same way we prove Darkseid wrong, by being exactly what we claim to be: warriors who use power responsibly. Superman nodded slowly. Then we make this public. Full transparency. Show Earth exactly what the Yamato is and why it's worth defending. Clark, Batman warned, that's a gamble. Public opinion is volatile. So we give them truth instead of fear, Superman replied. It's worked before. In Metropolis, Lex Luthor smiled, because he'd anticipated this response, counted on Superman's idealism, prepared for exactly this contingency. The real game was just beginning. The global broadcast went live at 1800 hours Greenwich Mean Time, transmitted simultaneously across every major network and streaming platform. LexCorp had purchased prime airtime, but Superman's arrangement with sympathetic media outlets ensured equal coverage. Half the world watched Lex Luthor standing in his Metropolis command center, surrounded by holographic displays showing the wave motion gun's devastating power. The other half watched Captain Kodai on the Yamato's bridge, his crew visible behind him, Earth rotating in the viewport beyond. Clark Kent, in his civilian identity, moderated from a neutral studio, because Superman appearing as arbiter would have undermined the transparency they were attempting. This needed to be human judgment evaluating human choices, even if one of the humans could bench press planets. Captain Kodai, Clark began, his journalistic instincts balancing empathy with hard questions. Suddenly, your ship carries a weapon that vaporized a 300-meter alien organism and boiled cubic kilometers of ocean. That's confirmed. What I'd like to understand is why Earth should trust you not to use that power against human targets. Kodai's response was measured, carrying the weight of someone who'd lived with this question for years. Because we've already made that choice. Our Earth faced extinction, planet bombs, radiation, 1 year until total biosphere collapse. The Yamato's wave motion gun could have solved dozens of problems through overwhelming force, hostile alien fleets, asteroid obstacles, planetary defenses. We could have blasted our way across 148,000 light years. He paused, meeting the camera directly. We fired it exactly 4 times. 4 instances where every alternative had failed and lives hung in the balance. Not because we lacked capability, because we chose restraint. Restraint, Lex Luthor's voice cut in smoothly, his image appearing in split screen, is admirable until it fails. And when it fails with a weapon of that magnitude, the consequences are species-ending. He gestured to holographic casualty projections. If Captain Kodai's targeting had been off by 0.3 degrees during the Starro engagement, the beam would have struck the mid-Atlantic ridge at a subduction zone. The resulting seismic cascade would have triggered tsunamis devastating coastal populations across 3 continents. Estimated casualties, 40 million dead within hours. The numbers hit like physical blows. Social media erupted with panic. Government representatives in the live studio audience shifted uncomfortably. This was Luthor's genius. He wasn't lying, or just highlighting the razor's edge between heroism and catastrophe. Mr. Luthor raises valid concerns, Clark said, his reporter's neutrality barely masking Superman's frustration. Captain, how do you respond to the risk assessment? By acknowledging it's accurate, Kodai said, and the honesty surprised everyone, including Luthor. 0.3 degrees variance would have caused exactly the disaster he describes, which is why our targeting systems have 7 redundant verification protocols. Why Sonata ran impact calculations 3 times before confirming firing solution. Why we train constantly for precision under impossible conditions. He leaned forward. Mr. Luthor presents risk as inevitable. We present it as manageable through discipline, training, and mutual accountability. Mutual accountability to whom? Luthor pressed. And the Justice League? An organization that operates without governmental oversight, answers to no civilian authority, and has members who could individually end human civilization? His expression carried calculated concern. I'm not questioning their intentions. I'm questioning a system where godlike beings police themselves and now shelter a foreign military vessel with planet-destroying capability. That's not accountability. That's aristocracy with better PR. The argument landed. Across monitoring stations, Batman watched public opinion metrics shift. Luthor was winning the philosophical debate by framing it as democracy versus autocracy rather than fear versus trust. Wonder Woman's voice came through the studio's speakers, patched in from the watchtower. Lex, your concern for democratic oversight is noted. Shall we discuss how many times LexCorp has violated international law? How many weapons you've developed without civilian oversight? The boom tube technology you just deployed came from reverse engineering stolen apocalypse tech, which violates 17 international treaties. What about ism isn't a defense, Diana? Luthor replied smoothly. My corporate activities are subject to courts, regulations, and government audits. The Justice League operates beyond such constraints. And now you're defending a crew who won't submit to basic safety inspections of a weapon that makes nuclear arsenals look like firecrackers. We're not refusing inspection, Sonata interjected, his scientist's precision cutting through rhetoric. We're refusing confiscation disguised as inspection. And there's a difference between verification and seizure. Luther's smile widened fractionally. He'd been waiting for this opening. Then prove it. Submit to full technical evaluation by an independent international commission. Allow Earth scientists to verify your safety protocols, examine your targeting systems, confirm the weapon can't be fired without proper authorization. If you're as responsible as you claim, transparency should be welcomed. It was a trap wrapped in reasonableness. Batman saw it immediately. Cyborg's analysis confirmed it within seconds. Any technical evaluation would expose the wave motion gun's complete specifications, energy output, exotic matter composition, targeting algorithms. Information Luthor would have access to through his corporate connections, his government contacts, his 1,000 backdoor channels into every institution on Earth. But refusing would confirm every fear Luthor had planted. Make the Yamato crew look like they were hiding something dangerous? Prove his point about unaccountable power? Kodai glanced at Sonata, saw the science officer's minute headshake warning against accepting, looked to Tokugawa, whose engineering pride warred with tactical caution, met Yuki's eyes and saw the same impossible calculation reflected there. Principle versus survival. We'll agree to inspection, Kodai said, and Luthor's triumph flickered across his expression for a microsecond before professional composure reasserted, under specific conditions. The inspection team includes representatives from the Justice League, the United Nations, and independent scientists of established reputation. All findings are made public simultaneously, no selective disclosure, and the inspection occurs on the Yamato with our crew present, not in a LexCorp facility where convenient accidents might occur. Acceptable, Luthor said too quickly, which meant he'd already planned for this contingency. I'll have my legal team draft protocols within 24 hours. The world will finally see exactly what we're dealing with. The broadcast shifted to analyst panels, expert commentary, public reaction feeds. But the real conversation was happening in encrypted channels between the Watchtower and the Yamato. You just gave Luthor everything he wanted, Batman said flatly. He'll have scientists examining the wave motion gun's core systems. Even with oversight, he'll get enough data to reverse engineer the basic principles. I know, Kodai replied. Wait, but we couldn't refuse without confirming his narrative. Sometimes the only winning move is choosing which battle to lose. Strategically sound, Wonder Woman acknowledged, but dangerous. Luthor doesn't just want information. He wants ammunition for his next move. She was right, and the next move came faster than anyone anticipated. 18 hours after the broadcast, Cyborg detected anomalous energy signatures in Earth's upper atmosphere. Not boom tubes, not apocalypse technology, something else. Quantum fluctuations that match theoretical models for dimensional breaches, but shouldn't be possible with current Earth technology. The signatures were emanating from LexCorp's Antarctic research facility. He's building his own dimensional gateway, Cyborg reported, holographic schematics appearing in the Watchtower's command center. Using data harvested from the Yamato's arrival event, he's trying to replicate the exotic matter reactions that pulled you into our universe. That's insane, Sonata said, his voice crackling through the comlink from the Yamato. The dimensional breach that brought us here was barely controlled. We nearly tore apart the quantum barriers between realities. Luthor's attempting to weaponize forces he doesn't understand. He understands enough, Batman said grimly. He's not trying to create stable portals. He's trying to create targeted instabilities, dimensional weapons that could theoretically disrupt the wave motion gun's exotic matter containment. The implications crystallized. Luthor couldn't seize the Yamato through force or legal maneuvering, so he was developing a weapon specifically designed to neutralize it. And he was doing it using principles reverse-engineered from their own arrival. How close is he to operational capability? Superman asked, already calculating flight time to Antarctica. Unknown, Cyborg replied, but the energy spikes suggest active testing. He's pushing dimensional boundaries that could... His system screamed warnings. Proximity alert, boom tube opening, origin signature is... The portal tore open directly beside the Yamato, close enough that the exotic matter turbulence disrupted the ship's shields. Through the dimensional gateway came a figure that made Superman's fists clench and Wonder Woman's hand move to her sword. Not Darkseid, something worse. Grail, the daughter of Darkseid and the Amazon assassin Marina Black, stepped through the boom tube with casual grace that belied her apocalyptic power. She wore armor that blended New God technology with Amazonian craftsmanship, carried the God-killer scythe that had ended deities, and her eyes burned with Omega fire inherited from her father. Captain Kodai, her voice carried across open channels with the purr of a predator who'd already won. My father sends his regards and an updated offer. Lex Luthor's dimensional experiments are tearing holes in reality. In approximately 6 hours, his facility will breach the quantum barriers catastrophically. The resulting dimensional collapse will pull your ship back into the void between realities, stranding you permanently, destroying the Yamato, and killing your entire crew. She smiled, and it was Darkseid's cruelty filtered through Amazonian beauty. Unless you accept Apocalypse's protection, surrender your vessel to my father's custody. He'll stabilize Luthor's dimensional chaos, preserve your ship, ensure your crew's survival. All he asks in return is the wave motion technology and your eternal service. Or, she continued, her scythe gleaming with divine murder, you refuse, die in the dimensional collapse, and my father claims the wreckage anyway. Your choice, Captain, but choose quickly. Luthor's arrogance is running out the clock. On Earth, in the Antarctic facility, Lex Luthor watched dimensional energy readings climbing toward critical thresholds and smiled. Because whether the Yamato crew accepted Darkseid's offer or died in the collapse, the result served his purposes. Either Apocalypse acquired a dangerous weapon that would justify his warnings about alien threats, or the weapon destroyed itself and proved his point about uncontrolled power. Either way, Lex Luthor had just forced the Justice League and the Yamato crew into an impossible corner. And in the Watchtower, Batman pulled up contingency protocols for scenarios that shouldn't exist. Plans for fighting Grail, Darkseid, and Lex Luthor simultaneously while preventing dimensional collapse and saving a crew of warriors who'd already lost one Earth and refused to lose another. We have 6 hours, Superman said quietly. Ideas? Kodai stared at Grail through the viewport, at the dimensional chaos building in Antarctica's upper atmosphere, at Earth rotating below, so much like home, so impossibly far from it. We stopped running, he said finally. We stopped choosing between bad options other people force on us. We make our own option. How? Wonder Woman asked. By doing what the Yamato crew does best, Kodai replied, with his voice carrying the steel of someone who'd navigated 148,000 light-years through impossible odds. We fly straight into the impossible, and we find a way through. The Yamato's engines roared to full thrust for the first time since arriving in DC's universe. Exotic matter reactions cascading through systems designed to cross galactic distances in months rather than millennia. The ship broke from geosynchronous orbit with acceleration that made Newton's laws weep, diving toward Earth's atmosphere on a trajectory that every sensor on the Watchtower screamed was suicidal. Captain, atmospheric entry at this velocity will generate heat that could compromise hull integrity, Sonata reported, his scientists calm, barely masking controlled panic. We're designed for space combat, not orbital insertion at these speeds. Tokugawa, Kodai said, with ignoring the warning, divert wave motion engine power to forward shields, maximum deflection. Yuki, plot entry corridor that terminates directly above LexCorp's Antarctic facility. Sir, Yuki's fingers flew across navigation controls. That puts us in direct path of Luthor's dimensional instability. The exotic matter turbulence could tear us apart. Or it could be exactly what we need. Kodai pulled up schematics Sonata had compiled of Luthor's experimental gateway. The dimensional breach that brought us here resonated with our wave motion engine's exotic matter signature. Luthor's trying to replicate that resonance artificially. What if we don't fight the instability? What if we stabilize it? Understanding dawned across Sonata's face. Use the Yamato's exotic matter emissions to harmonize with Luthor's chaotic dimensional frequencies. Create a controlled resonance instead of catastrophic collapse. His hands were already running calculations. It's theoretically possible, but the timing would need to be perfect. 1 second too early or too late, and we either get torn into the dimensional void or Luthor's facility explodes with energy equivalent to a nuclear detonation. Then we make it perfect, Kodai said. Shima, weapon status? All systems operational. Wave motion gun at 73% charge. Shima's hands rested on firing controls with the steady calm of someone who'd targeted impossible shots before. If this doesn't work and Grail engages, we can defend ourselves. In space behind them, Grail watched the Yamato's atmospheric entry with growing confusion that shifted to grudging respect. They're not running from my father's offer. They're attacking the source of the dimensional instability directly. She activated her mother box, transmitting to Apocalypse. Father, the humans are more tactically aggressive than anticipated, requesting permission to engage. Darkseid's voice rumbled across dimensions. Observe. If they fail, we claim the wreckage. If they succeed, we learn how they stabilize dimensional chaos. Valuable intelligence for future acquisition attempts. On the watchtower, Superman was already moving. I'm going after them. Negative, Batman's voice cut through. Clark, if you interfere with their atmospheric entry at those speeds, you could destabilize their trajectory. They've committed to a plan. Sheer trust it or risk making it fail. Superman's fist clenched, every Kryptonian instinct screaming to intervene, to protect, to save people who were diving into danger with calculated precision instead of desperate hope. But Batman was right. Sometimes trust meant watching warriors risk everything and believing in their competence. The Yamato hit Earth's atmosphere like a meteorite with a conscience. Friction generated plasma sheaths that turned the ship's forward shields incandescent. Temperature readings climbed past tolerance thresholds. Hull plating groaned under thermal stress. And through it all, Yuki's navigation held them on a corridor so precise that air traffic control systems couldn't decide whether to classify them as aircraft, orbital debris, or natural disaster. Inside the ship, one crew members gripped their stations as vibration threatened to shake rivets loose. Medical bay activated emergency protocols. Damage control teams stood ready with repair equipment. The entire vessel became a testament to engineering, pushed beyond design parameters and holding together through sheer determination. Approaching Antarctic airspace, Yuki reported. LexCorp facility is directly below. Dimensional energy readings are... Her voice caught. Captain, the instability is worse than Cyborg's estimates. Luthor's gateway is tearing holes between at least 3 different realities simultaneously. Through the viewport, they could see it, a maelstrom of dimensional chaos crackling above Antarctica's ice. Reality was fragmenting like broken glass, and through the cracks, impossible things were visible. A universe where Earth was a burning wasteland, another where oceans boiled under a dying red sun, a third that was pure darkness, empty of stars or hope. The dark multiverse was bleeding through Lex Luthor's arrogance. In his Antarctic facility, Luthor stared at readings that defied every theoretical model. His scientists were evacuating, his security forces retreating, his carefully controlled experiments spinning into chaos that threatened to tear a hole in reality large enough to swallow the continent. Sir, his lead physicist's voice shook with terror. We need to shut down the gateway immediately. The dimensional barriers are collapsing faster than predicted. If this breach expands... I'm aware of the consequences, Doctor, Luthor said coldly, even as his mind raced through contingency plans that all ended in catastrophic failure. His attempt to weaponize dimensional instability had backfired spectacularly. The gateway was feeding on itself, growing exponentially, pulling matter and energy from multiple realities simultaneously. He'd wanted to prove the Yamato was dangerous. Instead, he'd created an apocalypse. The Yamato leveled off at 50,000 feet, hovering above the dimensional maelstrom, with exotic matter engines straining against gravitational anomalies. Sonata's sensors painted the chaos in brutal detail. Quantum fluctuations powerful enough to shred molecules, dimensional rifts that would scatter atoms across infinite realities, energy patterns that would make Starro's telepathic assault look gentle by comparison. Tokugawa, Kodai said quietly, can we do this? Unknown, Captain, the engineer replied with brutal honesty. The theory is sound. Wash, the execution is impossible. We'd need to match our exotic matter emissions to three different dimensional frequencies simultaneously while compensating for gravitational shear, electromagnetic interference, and quantum uncertainty. One mistake and we either get pulled into the dark multiverse or trigger a dimensional explosion that sterilizes Antarctica. So it's another Tuesday, Shima said, and despite everything, several crew members managed tight smiles. Kodai activated shipwide communications. All hands, this is the captain. We're about to attempt something that shouldn't work. We're going to dive into a dimensional collapse zone and use our wave motion engine to stabilize forces that could tear reality apart. If we fail, we die. If we succeed, we prove to everyone watching, Darkseid, Luthor, the Justice League, in Earth itself, that we're not weapons waiting for someone to aim us. We're warriors who solve impossible problems. He paused, looking at the crew stations around the bridge. Yuki's steady hands on navigation. Shima's combat-ready posture at weapons. Sanada's analytical mind already running final calculations. Tokugawa's engineering pride radiating through the comm link. We didn't survive 148,000 light-years by accepting other people's definitions of impossible. We survived by choosing to try anyway. Today's no different. All stations, prepare for dimensional insertion. On my mark. The Yamato's nose dipped toward the maelstrom. Superman watched from orbit, his enhanced vision seeing every detail of the ship's approach. Beside him, Wonder Woman had materialized via boom tube. Her warrior's instinct recognizing a battle that would be won or lost through courage rather than strength. They're mad, she said quietly. They're magnificent, Superman replied. The Yamato dove into the dimensional chaos like a sword thrust into a wound, and reality screamed. Exotic matter emissions flooded through the wave motion engine at levels that made safety protocols obsolete. Tokugawa manually overrode every limiter, pushing the engine beyond redline into territory where theoretical physics became prayer and hope. The ship's hull began resonating with the dimensional frequencies, matching, harmonizing, creating constructive interference where there had been only destructive chaos. It was like singing a perfect note to shatter glass, except reversed, using harmony to reinforce structure instead of collapse it. Dimensional frequency alpha matched, Sanada reported, sweat beading on his forehead as he fought to keep sensors functional through reality distortions. Beta frequency, compensating, matched. Gamma frequency is fluctuating too rapidly to... I've got it, Yuki said, her navigator's instinct for impossible courses translating to dimensional harmonics. Her hands danced across controls, making micro-adjustments that shouldn't work but somehow did, finding patterns in chaos through intuition that transcended calculation. The maelstrom stabilized, slowly at first, then with cascading momentum as the Yamato's exotic matter emissions imposed order on dimensional anarchy. The rifts to other realities began closing, the fragmenting quantum barriers knitted back together. Reality remembered how to be singular instead of fractured. Why, in his Antarctic facility, Luthor watched readings normalize with an expression caught between relief and fury. The Yamato had done the impossible, stabilized a dimensional collapse that his best scientists couldn't control. Proved their capability exceeded his estimation. Demonstrated exactly the kind of independent operational power he'd been warning about. And worst of all, they'd done it to save Earth from a catastrophe he'd created. Grail watched from orbit, her Omega-enhanced vision tracking exotic matter flows that her father would find extremely interesting. They've mastered dimensional harmonics, she transmitted to Apocalypse. This changes threat assessment significantly. Indeed, Darkseid's voice carried satisfaction rather than concern. They've proven themselves worthy of acquisition. Intensify surveillance. Their capabilities will serve Apocalypse well once resistance is broken. The dimensional maelstrom collapsed completely, stabilizing into a single controlled gateway that the Yamato's engines held open through pure exotic matter resonance. Through that gateway, visible for just a moment before it closed, the crew saw something that made their hearts seize. Their Earth, their universe, home. The gateway was unstable, already collapsing, but for 3 perfect seconds, they saw the planet they'd saved, blue and green and alive, exactly as they'd left it, saw the stars they'd navigated, recognized constellations that shouldn't exist in DC's universe, but did in theirs. Then the gateway snapped shut, and they were alone in alien skies again. The Yamato settled into stable hover above Antarctica, engines cooling, systems recovering from stress that should have torn the ship apart. On the bridge, nobody spoke. The glimpse of home had reopened wounds they'd been ignoring, made exile real in ways that abstract knowledge couldn't. Captain? Tokugawa's voice was rough with emotion he rarely showed. For those 3 seconds, I had telemetry from our universe, distance calculations, dimensional coordinates. A pause. We could go back. Not now. Our exotic matter reserves are depleted. But with time, with proper preparation, we could recreate that gateway. Go home. The possibility hung in the air like a promise and a curse. They could leave. Abandon DC's universe to its wars and gods and endless struggle. Return to the Earth they'd saved, the families they'd left, the lives that had been interrupted by dimensional accident. All they had to do was walk away from warriors who'd stood beside them. Leave Earth undefended against Darkseid's inevitable assault. Prove Luthor right about foreign military forces having no loyalty to humanity. Kodai looked at his crew, saw the same impossible choice reflected in every face, saw Yuki's eyes shining with tears she refused to shed, saw Shima's hand trembling on controls that could plot a course home, saw Sonata's analytical mind calculating probabilities of successful dimensional breach versus odds of survival in a universe that wanted their weapon. Log the dimensional coordinates, Kodai said finally. Store them in encrypted archives, because someday, when Darkseid is defeated and Luthor's schemes are finished and Earth doesn't need warriors with planet-destroying weapons, Witty will go home. He straightened in his command chair. But not today. Today we stay, because walking away from people who need help isn't who we are. The decision rippled through the crew like a wave, sadness and pride and determination mixing into something that couldn't be named, but felt like purpose. On Earth, in 1,000 monitoring stations, people watched the Yamato hover above Antarctica with new understanding. These weren't invaders, weren't threats, weren't even refugees seeking asylum. They were warriors who'd glimpsed home and chosen duty over desire. Superman's voice came through the comm channel, and despite Kryptonian control, it carried emotion. Captain Kodai, the Justice League formally requests your presence at the Watchtower. We have a proposal to discuss. Proposal? Kodai asked. An offer, Wonder Woman clarified. Hosh, you've proven yourselves a dozen times over. It's time we stopped treating you as guests and started treating you as what you are. Earth's orbital defense platform. Partners. Equals. The League wants to make it official, Superman added. If you're willing to stay, to fight beside us, to help defend Earth from threats beyond conventional response, we'd be honored to have you. In the silence that followed, Batman's voice cut through with characteristic pragmatism. Also, Lex Luthor just had his Antarctic facility impounded by international authorities for reckless endangerment. His dimensional experiments are being classified as crimes against reality itself. You did that by solving the problem he created. Good work. The Yamato's crew exchanged glances. They'd come to this universe by accident, stayed by necessity, fought by choice. And now they were being offered something more. A place, a purpose, a reason to be here beyond simple survival. We accept, Kodai said, on one condition. Name it, Superman replied. The wave motion gun stays under our command. We fire or hold fire based on our judgment, informed by League intelligence, but not subordinate to League authority. We're partners, not subordinates. A pause, then Batman's response. Acceptable. Your tactical record has earned that trust. As the Yamato climbed back toward orbital altitude, Grail watched from her dimensional perch and smiled coldly. Her father would not be pleased that Earth had gained such powerful allies, which meant the next assault would be larger, more brutal, more absolute. But that was tomorrow's war. Tonight, Earth had warriors who'd glimpsed paradise and chosen to stay in hell because it needed defending. And in the cosmos beyond human perception, Darkseid began planning acquisition strategies that would make his previous attempts look gentle by comparison. 3 weeks after the Antarctic incident, the Yamato had settled into its new role as Earth's orbital sentinel with the efficiency of a crew that had spent years adapting to impossible circumstances. The ship maintained position in high geosynchronous orbit, its sensors sweeping the void for threats that conventional satellites would miss. Cosmo Zero patrols ran defensive patterns alongside Green Lantern Corps training exercises. Tokugawa and Cyborg had developed a working friendship based on mutual engineering obsession, either collaborative modifications improving both wave motion efficiency and motherbox integration. Captain Kodai stood on the observation deck, watching Earth rotate below with the quiet contemplation of someone who'd saved two worlds now. The planet looked peaceful from orbit. No visible wars, no radiation scars, no dying oceans. But he knew better. Knew that beneath that blue-green beauty, humanity struggled with the same fears and hopes that had driven his Earth to build the Yamato in the first place. Beautiful view, Superman's voice came from behind him, the Kryptonian having learned to announce his presence after several crew members nearly had heart attacks from his silent arrivals. Never gets old, does it? No, Kodai agreed. Or, though sometimes I wonder if we're seeing different things when we look at it. Superman settled beside him, floating cross-legged in a position that defied physics, but somehow looked natural. You see a world worth protecting, same as me. I see a world that will eventually ask us to leave, Kodai said quietly. Lex Luthor was temporarily discredited, but his arguments weren't wrong. We're foreign military power operating beyond civilian oversight. Sooner or later, that becomes intolerable to democratic societies. Maybe, Superman acknowledged, or maybe you've already proven something more important, that power doesn't have to corrupt if you choose accountability over authority. Your crew operates as a check on itself. That's more oversight than I have. He smiled slightly. Batman would argue I need more contingency plans against myself. He's probably right. Before Kodai could respond, priority alerts screamed across the Yamato's systems. Sonata's voice crackled through ship-wide communications with controlled urgency. Captain to the bridge. Multiple boom tube signatures detected. Apocalypse origin. Large-scale dimensional breach in progress. Kodai was running before the announcement finished, Superman accelerating beside him at speeds that made the corridor blur. They reached the bridge simultaneously, finding the crew already at battle stations, with the practiced efficiency of warriors who drilled for exactly this scenario. The tactical display painted a nightmare in harsh red geometry. Not one boom tube, but dozens, tearing open across Earth's orbital space in coordinated precision that spoke to meticulous planning. Through each portal came vessels that made the female Furies' previous reconnaissance look gentle by comparison. Parademon assault carriers, new god warships bristling with weapons technology that predated human civilization, and at the center of the formation, emerging from the largest boom tube, like Judgment made manifest, came a vessel that made even the Yamato look small. Darkseid's flagship, a city-sized dreadnought that radiated Omega energy like a dying sun, its hull inscribed with the mathematical proofs of the anti-life equation, its weapons capable of sterilizing planets or enslaving entire populations with equal efficiency. Fleet count? Kodai asked, his voice steady despite the tactical impossibility unfolding on screen. 47 capital ships, Sonata reported. Estimated Parademon complement, 300,000. New God command structure indicates this isn't raiding force. This is invasion. He looked up from his console, analytical calm cracking slightly. Captain, this is the largest apocalypse assault on Earth in recorded history. They're not here for reconnaissance or acquisition. They're here for conquest. The Justice League was already mobilizing. Superman streaked toward the flagship, cape streaming with solar wind. Wonder Woman materialized via boom tube with a phalanx of Amazon warriors she'd summoned from Themyscira. Diana had called in favors from her mother. Dawn and Queen Hippolyta had answered, because defending man's world from Darkseid's tyranny transcended isolationist policy. Green Lantern Hal Jordan led a squadron of Lantern Corps members, their rings blazing with emerald willpower. The Flash evacuated coastal populations at superspeed, preparing for collateral damage. Aquaman marshaled Atlantean forces to defend the oceans. Cyborg coordinated defensive satellites and global military response. But even combined, Earth's defenders were outnumbered 10-1 by forces that had conquered galaxies. Darkseid himself appeared on every screen simultaneously. The Watchtower, the Yamato, every communication device on Earth. His stone face was carved malevolence given form, his eyes burning with omega fire that had ended gods. When he spoke, reality itself seemed to flinch. People of Earth, the voice carried the weight of crushed civilizations. I am Darkseid. I am the revelation, the tiger force at the core of all things. I have watched your world resist my dominion through luck and heroic sacrifice. Today, luck ends. Today, heroes learn their limitations. His gaze seemed to focus specifically on the Yamato. Captain Kodai, you refused my partnership, chose Superman's naive idealism over pragmatic power. Now you will witness what that choice costs. The parademon carriers opened their bays, and 300,000 shock troops poured into Earth's atmosphere like a biblical plague. Each one was a winged monstrosity of biotechnology and cruelty, armed with weapons that could shred steel, driven by hive mind intelligence that made tactical coordination effortless. From all hands, Kodai said across shipwide communications. This is what we trained for. This is why we stayed. Cosmo Zero squadrons, launch and engage parademon formations, prioritize protecting civilian evacuation corridors. Shima, bring all weapon systems online. Tokugawa, I need wave motion gun charged to full capacity. Captain, Yuki's voice carried the weight of tactical reality. Even at full power, the wave motion gun can destroy one capital ship. They have 47. We can't win this through firepower alone. Then we win it through precision, Kodai replied. Sonata, analyze Darkseid's fleet formation. Find me the tactical linchpin, the vessel coordinating parademon deployment, managing boom tube logistics, maintaining formation cohesion. Sonata's fingers danced across his console. I'm processing terabytes of sensor data faster than the ship's AI could compile. Command carrier at grid coordinates Sierra 7. It's maintaining quantum-linked communication with all parademon forces. If we eliminate it, the hive mind coordination fails. They'll still have 300,000 shock troops, but they'll be operating independently instead of as coordinated army. Target locked, Shima confirmed, his hands steady on firing controls. Wave motion gun charged to 87%. Captain, that carrier is positioned directly behind Darkseid's flagship. To hit it, we have to fire through his vessel first. The implications crystallized. The wave motion gun could punch through Darkseid's flagship. The exotic matter beam would shred New God technology like tissue paper. But doing so meant attacking the Lord of Apocalypse directly, in full view of his invasion fleet, with Earth's survival hanging in the balance. It was a declaration of war against a god who'd been waging war since before human civilization learned to write. Superman's voice crackled across the command channel, transmitted from his position engaging parademon swarms. Kodai, I can draw Darkseid away from the flagship. Give you a clear shot at the command carrier without hitting him directly. Negative, Wonder Woman's voice cut through, her combat instincts reading the tactical situation faster than analysis could. Clark, Darkseid positioned that flagship deliberately. He's baiting us into either accepting impossible targeting or engaging him in single combat. If you take the bait, he isolates Earth's strongest defender while his forces overwhelm everyone else. Then what's our play? Green Lantern demanded, his constructs straining against parademon numbers that seemed infinite. Batman's voice, cold and analytical, despite coordinating 12 simultaneous defensive operations, provided the answer. We trust the Yamato's precision. Captain Kodai, you threaded a needle hitting Starro's neural cluster from orbital range. Can you fire through Darkseid's flagship, disable it without destroying it completely, and hit the command carrier behind? Unknown, Kodai said honestly. We've never attempted a precision shot through a hostile vessel at this range, with this much interference. The exotic matter beam might deflect off New God hull plating, might detonate Darkseid's Omega batteries and trigger chain reaction, might punch through clean and hit exactly what we're aiming for. So it's a gamble, Batman said. Everything's a gamble, Kodai replied. The question is whether we take calculated risks or surrender to fear. On Earth, Lex Luthor watched the invasion from his Metropolis tower with an expression caught between vindication and horror. He'd warned them. warned everyone that harboring the Yamato would attract exactly this kind of catastrophic attention. Now Earth faced extinction-level assault, and the weapon he'd tried to confiscate or neutralize was humanity's best hope. The irony was not lost on him. Darkseid's voice boomed across communication channels again. Your hesitation is pragmatic, Captain Kodai. You understand that firing on my flagship means war without mercy or quarter. Perhaps you're finally learning wisdom. Surrender your vessel now and I will spare Earth this one time. Your crew enters my service. Your world lives to see another day. Refuse, and I demonstrate why civilizations across 1,000 galaxies kneel before Darkseid. It was the offer tyrants always made, slavery disguised as mercy, surrender packaged as wisdom. Kodai looked at his crew, saw Shima's hands ready on weapons controls, saw Yuki's navigation plotting evasive maneuvers for the counter-strike that would inevitably come, saw Sanada's analytical mind already calculating optimal firing solutions, saw Tokugawa's engineering readouts showing the wave motion gun at 100% charge, exotic matter containment holding, despite stress that should have blown the engine. He thought about his Earth, the one they'd saved through impossible journey and desperate courage. He thought about the billions who'd lived because the Yamato crew refused to accept extinction as inevitable. Thought about this Earth, so similar yet distinct, populated by heroes who'd stood beside them, despite having every reason to treat them as threats. Thought about Superman's trust and Wonder Woman's respect, and Batman's contingency plans that somehow felt like acceptance. Thought about the choice every warrior faces eventually: die fighting or live kneeling. Message to Darkseid, Kodai said quietly. The Yamato crew doesn't surrender. We didn't build this ship to kneel. We built it to save Earth's. He straightened in his command chair. Tell him he's about to learn why. Shima, Kodai said, his voice carrying across the bridge like a bell toll. Fire the wave motion gun, maximum precision, thread the needle. Show them what the Yamato can do. Shima's hand came down on the firing authorization, and for the second time in Earth's skies, the wave motion gun spoke with the voice of desperate hope made manifest. The exotic matter beam lanced across the void in a line of purple-white fury that made the sun seem dim by comparison. It struck Darkseid's flagship at the precise angle Sanada had calculated. Not head-on where New God armor was strongest, but at the mathematical seam where hull plates joined, where structural integrity gave way to engineering compromise. The beam punched through the flagship like a spear through wet paper. New God technology that had withstood attacks from the Green Lantern Corps, from Superman at full power, so from cosmic entities whose names humanity had forgotten, all of it failed before exotic matter physics that operated on principles Apocalypse had never encountered. The flagship shuddered but didn't explode. The beam had threaded through it with surgical precision, disabling primary systems without triggering Omega battery detonation. And beyond the flagship, exactly as targeted, the command carrier took the wave motion gun's full fury directly to its quantum communication core. The carrier exploded in a cascade of failing technology and rupturing boom tubes. The quantum link coordinating 300,000 parademons died in a microsecond. The hive mind shattered. Across Earth's skies, parademon shock troops suddenly stopped operating as a coordinated army and became 300,000 individual organisms acting on base programming without strategic direction. They were still dangerous, still armed, still lethal, still numerous beyond conventional defense. But they were no longer unstoppable. The Justice League and Global Defense Forces hit the disorganized swarms with everything they had. Superman's heat vision carved through parademon formations like a scythe through wheat. Wonder Woman's Amazons fought with 3,000-year-old tactics perfected against monsters. Green Lantern constructs became a web of emerald light that caught and crushed biotechnology. The Flash evacuated wounded civilians faster than parademons could target them. Aquaman's forces defended ocean cities with tridents and ancient magic. And the Yamato's Cosmo Zero squadrons, outnumbered 50 to 1, flew like demons themselves, weaving through parademon swarms with precision born from navigating asteroid fields at relativistic speeds, their pilots laughing with the manic joy of warriors who'd already survived one apocalypse and refused to bow to another. On Darkseid's damaged flagship, The Lord of Apocalypse stood amid sparking systems and shattered displays with an expression that might have been rage or respect or both. His Omega eyes tracked the Yamato with the focus of someone recalculating threat assessments in real time. Captain Kodai, his voice rumbled with something that wasn't quite admiration, but wasn't quite fury either. You have courage. That will make breaking you more satisfying. He raised one hand. Os and Omega beams lanced from his eyes. Twin streams of Omega energy that could kill gods, erase beings from existence, rewrite reality on a molecular level. The beams crossed the distance between flagship and Yamato in a nanosecond. Superman intercepted them 3 meters from the Yamato's hull. His body absorbed Omega radiation that would have annihilated the ship and everyone aboard, felt his Kryptonian cells burning with energy that violated every law of physics, and he screamed with pain that transcended the physical. But he held, because that's what Superman did. He held the line between impossible power and the people who needed protecting, regardless of the cost. Wonder Woman was there a second later, her bracers raised, deflecting the second Omega beam back toward its source. Though the reflected energy struck Darkseid's chest, and he staggered. Actually staggered, because Amazonian bracelets forged by Hephaestus himself could turn even a god's wrath. You want the Yamato? Diana's voice carried 3 millennia of combat fury. You go through me first. Darkseid's smile was terrible to behold. As you wish, Amazon. The battle that followed would be recorded in Justice League archives as the Apocalypse Incursion. 14 hours of continuous combat across 6 continents and Earth's entire orbital space. The Yamato fired the wave motion gun 3 more times at critical targets, each shot precisely calculated to eliminate Parademon carrier groups without civilian casualties. The Justice League fought with coordination that made their training look amateur by comparison. In global military forces proved that humanity could stand beside heroes when extinction demanded it. And slowly, impossibly, Earth's defenders turned the tide. Darkseid recognized the shift before his generals did. Recognized that this invasion, planned for months, had failed the moment the Yamato threaded a precision shot through his flagship. Not because the shot destroyed his forces, he had infinite parademons to replace losses, but because it proved something he couldn't accept, that mortal determination, properly applied, could defy even gods. Retreat, he commanded, and boom tubes blossomed across the battlefield like flowers of dimensional fire. Parademon swarms fled through the portals. Capital ships withdrew with the precision of a military force that had executed tactical retreats across 1,000 campaigns. Within minutes, counter-Earth skies were clearing. Darkseid himself paused before his flagship retreated, his Omega eyes fixed on the Yamato one final time. This isn't over, Captain Kodai, he transmitted across open channels. You've won today's battle, but the war between Apocalypse and Earth just escalated beyond anything your league has faced. I will have your vessel, your technology, your crew service. A pause. Or I will have your ashes scattered across the cosmos as a lesson to others who defy me. The flagship vanished through its boom tube, and the largest apocalypse invasion in history ended not with Earth's subjugation, but with strategic withdrawal. In the silence that followed, Captain Kodai stood on the Yamato's bridge, surrounded by his exhausted crew, and allowed himself one moment of genuine relief. They'd survived. Earth had survived. The impossible had been defied one more time through courage, precision, and warriors who refused to accept defeat. Superman materialized on the bridge via Cyborg's transporter, his uniform scorched from Omega energy, minor burns already healing. He looked at Kodai and the assembled Yamato crew with an expression that transcended gratitude. You saved us, Superman said simply. Without your precision, without that first shot disabling the command carrier, we would have been overwhelmed. We fought beside you, Kodai replied. That's what partners do. Batman's voice crackled across the comm channel. Preliminary casualty reports are in. Civilian deaths, 47, all from initial Parademon descent before defensive lines established. Projected casualties without Yamato intervention, 400,000 minimum. You didn't just fight beside us, Captain. You prevented a massacre. The numbers settled over the bridge like a benediction and a burden. 47 deaths was 47 too many, But weighed against hundreds of thousands saved, the mathematics of warfare justified the choices made. There will be more battles, Wonder Woman said, her voice carrying the weight of someone who'd fought in wars that span centuries. Darkseid doesn't forget, doesn't forgive. He'll return with strategies adapted to counter the Yamato's capabilities. We need to be ready. We will be, Kodai said, because we're not leaving. This is our fight now, our Earth to defend. In the weeks that followed, Earth's reaction to the Yamato crew shifted fundamentally. Public opinion, manipulated by Luthor's fear-mongering and legitimate concerns about unregulated power, transformed overnight into something approaching reverence. The warriors who'd glimpsed home and chosen to stay, who'd fired precision shots that saved hundreds of thousands, who'd stood beside the Justice League against extinction. They weren't foreign military assets anymore. They were Earth's orbital guardians, symbols of hope that matched Superman's S, Wonder Woman's tiara, Batman's symbol. The Yamato became a constellation in Earth's skies, visible to anyone who looked up and remembered that sometimes salvation came from the most unlikely places. Lex Luthor watched the public adoration with barely concealed fury, his plans to discredit or confiscate the Yamato shattered against the reality of heroism too public to deny. He'd been right about the danger of unregulated power. He'd been wrong about whether warriors could wield it responsibly. The difference between being right and being wise had never been clearer. On the Yamato's observation deck, Captain Kodai stood with Yuki watching Earth rotate below. Their new home chosen not by accident, but by conscious decision to stay when they could have fled. "Do you regret it?" Yuki asked quietly. "We could have gone home, seen our families, lived normal lives." "Every day," Kodai admitted. "And not at all." He gestured to the planet below. "We saved our Earth by traveling 148,000 light years. We're saving this one by traveling zero distance and staying anyway. Maybe that's what heroism is, not the impossible journey, but the choice to remain when running would be easier." Below them, Earth continued its eternal rotation. In Metropolis, Superman helped rebuild structures damaged during the battle. In Gotham, Batman updated his contingency files with new data on New God tactics. In Themyscira, Wonder Woman trained with her sisters, preparing for Darkseid's inevitable return. Across 6 continents, humanity went about its daily business with the resilience that had defined the species since the first human looked at impossible odds and chose to try anyway. And in orbit, the space battleship Yamato maintained its vigil, a steel promise that Earth would not face the darkness alone. That desperate warriors from another reality stood ready to fire precision shots through gods themselves, if that's what survival demanded. Darkseid would return, Lex Luthor would scheme. New threats would emerge from cosmic depths or dimensional rifts or humanity's own darkness. But the Yamato crew had faced extinction before and won through courage, competence, and the refusal to surrender hope, even when hope seemed foolish. They'd do it again, as many times as necessary, because that's what the Yamato was built for. Not conquest, not glory, but the simple, impossible act of saving worlds that deserved to survive. The space battleship Yamato became legend in DC's universe not through conquest, but through restraint. In a cosmos where gods walked as heroes and heroes sometimes became tyrants, the crew from another reality proved that ultimate power could exist without ultimate corruption, if wielded by warriors who chose precision over expedience, accountability over authority, and partnership over dominion. And Captain Kodai and his crew had lost one Earth to save it, then found another Earth worth defending. They'd faced Darkseid's tyranny, Lex Luthor's manipulation, and their own temptation to flee home when home became briefly possible. Each time they'd chosen the harder path, the path of warriors who understood that the greatest battles weren't won through overwhelming force, but through the courage to use that force only when absolutely necessary. The wave motion gun remained under Yamato command, a symbol of trust earned through precision, demonstrated across impossible shots, and restraint shown in moments when firing would have been easier than holding fire. The Justice League had gained not subordinates but equals, warriors whose tactical brilliance and moral clarity matched the League's own ideals while challenging assumptions about power and oversight. And Earth had gained orbital guardians who'd proven that hope could cross dimensions, that heroism wasn't bound by universe of origin, and that sometimes salvation arrived not through native sons, but through strangers who chose to stay when they could have left. Darkseid would return with adapted strategies. The crew knew this. The League knew this. But they also knew they would face that return together. Kryptonian might and Amazon fury, inhuman ingenuity, and desperate precision working in concert against tyranny that had conquered galaxies. The Yamato's journey hadn't ended. It had simply found a new mission in skies far from home. And as Captain Kodai watched Earth rotate beneath his vessel, blue and green and alive and worth everything they'd sacrificed, he understood something his original mission had taught him. Home isn't where you're from. It's where you choose to fight, where you choose to hope, where you choose to believe that impossible odds mean nothing against warriors who refuse to surrender. The universe was vast. Threats were infinite. But the Yamato crew had crossed 148,000 light-years once before. Whatever came next, they'd be ready.